One up at the Hunter Association headquarters, agents look suspiciously out the window. Some rookie was the sole survivor of a brutal dungeon accident. Out of 5 hunters, he alone made it back, a D-rank support. The weakest link, a nervous female agent whispers, wondering if he killed them. Her partner snaps at her. They are not cops, and besides, dungeon business stays there. She grumbles in agreement, but asks why he just smacked her head outside. She rubs her head, asking why he smacked her if they are out of the dungeon now. He just sighs. Small-time guilds always bite off more than they can chew for quick cash. And this is how they end up, yet, walking away, he cannot shake his doubts. Staring at the case file, he knows something is off with Shin Junio. During the interrogation, the kid was entirely too calm for a rookie. He barely has any real experience, yet he did not even flinch. Suspicious, the investigator decides to dig deeper. Meanwhile, Shin is sprinting through the woods. The clumsy guy is running incredibly late for his very first guild run. Kim Duan grumbles about whether rookies should get away with being this late. Kim Jim defends him, pointing out Duan was just as bad back then. Duan mutters a weak excuse, but Jim warns that the leader is waiting. Catching up, Shin knows he must change. This is his big moment. His first support run. Inside the gate, team leader Moon Do-yoon turns to him. He asks if Shin knows the drill. Non-combat support stay hidden and safe. But do not wander too far, unless you want to be Monster Chow. Shin just needs to conjure up weapons whenever Do-yoon calls for them. Suddenly, the team mage tenses up, sensing heavy monster mana closing in fast. The rest of the crew remains relaxed, but Do-yoon keeps his guard up. Shin needs exactly 20 seconds to forge a dagger, best to start early. Crystal lizards leap from the dark, snapping their jaws in a vicious rush. The tank triggers his skill, slamming his heavy shield down to draw their attention. Jim charges straight ahead, shattering the beast's crystalline teeth with a heavy strike. She pulls off a flawless somersault, landing in perfect form. But the lizards instantly heal their wounds and charge right back at them. Jim yells out that their regeneration speed is completely off the charts. The mage unleashes a massive fireball, nearly singeing the tank's hair. Meanwhile, Shin focuses all his energy on finishing the leader's weapon. A created weapon's ultimate strength depends entirely on the caster's own mana. Catching the blade, Do-yoon activates his shadow skill and slashes forward. The lizard's heavy head thuds to the ground, and the temporary dagger crumbles. Talk about a perfect sync. The rest of the guild celebrates their clean win. Shin watches in absolute awe. His seniors operate on a whole different level. Their coordination is so flawless that it makes him feel completely useless. He mutters a quiet apology, but Do-yoon immediately shuts down his self-doubt. Normal weapons cost a fortune, and Do-yoon breaks them constantly. This means Shin's crafting makes him absolutely vital to the team's survival. Hearing this, our gloomy protagonist finally feels a spark of real worth. But just as they prepare to gather the loot, the cavern starts shaking. A violent tremor rattles their bones. Shin points ahead as a wall collapses. Mage lights up the cave, calling it a secret passage, but the leader is immediately suspicious. He worries this could be a deadly double dungeon. But the tank is blinded by greed, insisting they go in for the real treasure. Hearing about treasure, the girl instantly gets just as excited. Although the mage senses absolutely nothing inside, a bad feeling still lingers. The leader decides on a quick look inside. 10 minutes later, everything goes wrong. Shin is running for his life, terrified by how fast those elite hunters fell. The tank's defense failed instantly, while the fighter and mage got completely wiped out. That beast shredded them. Even their leader lost his dominant arm in the chaos. Now Shin is the next target. A massive strike hits him from behind. Pinned down and bleeding, he desperately summons a sword to fight back. But it is completely useless. He is just a weak support. He has no real power. The golem's heavy fist shatters the floor. Plunging into the icy water below, he finally understands the despair of the weak. All his high hopes of joining this guild are gone. They were the first ones who actually valued him, and now he is dying. Right as his life fades, a strange spark ignites memories of another life. Suddenly, a glowing screen appears, asking him to accept a new reward. Gasping for air and pushed to his absolute limit, Shin quickly hits accept. He summons swords beneath his feet, climbing them like stairs to face the enemy. Standing face to face with the giant ice golem, Shin releases a freezing aura. Locking his eyes on the beast, he manifests a cluster of energy blades. He launches the swords forward, tearing deep wounds right into the monster. As the golem's foreign memories flood his mind, he has no time to process. The creature roars and strikes back, forcing Shin to conjure a massive shield. He blocks the crushing blow and quickly leaps back to create some distance. He triggers his next skill, the spatial grid, summoning endless blades. With a clench of his fist, the weapons impale the golem from all sides. He completely shatters the giant into icy pieces. Honestly, talk about an insane power-up. Instinctively, he feels himself absorbing its residual energy, another newly unlocked ability. But those strange memories keep swirling. He cannot understand what they mean. Yet they are unmistakably his own, like visions from a future self. In this grim future, the entire world has collapsed, leaving almost no survivors. Even the strongest hunters of that era perished in one final, cataclysmic battle. But Shin still has no idea how he died or why these memories exist. Sure, awakening these godlike abilities is a massive win, but at what cost? He cannot celebrate when he is surrounded by the corpses of his teammates. After reporting the tragedy and hauling the bodies out, he walks home in silence. The whole situation feels wrong, leaving him with a deep, nagging suspicion. There is something highly suspicious about this unconfirmed gate. For starters, this dungeon never existed in his memories of the future. Even worse, the guild's official paperwork clearly carried the Hunter Association's seal. Yet the association claims they never authorized it. Either someone forged the documents to trick the Dome Guild, or the association itself is running a dark, highly illegal operation. This was no fluke. The investigator's grim warning kept ringing in his ears. Tons of rogue gates, people vanishing. Shin started noticing something. A dark thread ran through every single guild in those reports. Top-tier fighters, guild leader Doyen, even legendary prodigies in the making. It was clear someone was systematically hunting down future heroes. The realization hit Shin like a heavy punch straight to the gut. He had to bury his abilities deep. After all, he was the sole survivor of a cold case destined to remain unsolved. One wrong move, one slip of his true strength, and they would catch him instantly. He had exactly 2 years before the first player selection process began. He had to master his current arsenal and unlock even more skills. His growth needed to be absolutely massive, yet entirely off the radar. No spotlight, he quietly opened his system menu and tapped a skill. A whole year flashes by. Deep inside a dark, oppressive forest, a party is desperately fighting for survival. Suddenly, one hunter's worn blade shatters completely against a monster's thick hide. The beast roars, slamming him backward into the dirt. He scrambles to get up, but the creature lunges again. He barely rolls away as his team freezes. In pure horror, that's when the terrifying reality finally sinks in. They are standing right in front of a deadly Null Lord. The boy gasps. These things belong in E-rank frozen dungeons, yet this one is right here. Alive and breathing, he remembers the warnings from veteran D-rank hunters. Null Lords are a complete nightmare to deal with in combat. The creature darts past him, locking its eyes on another party member. The defender barely gets his shield up, muscles tearing under the pressure. He screams through gritted teeth that they can't just block forever. They will get overrun. For low-rank hunters, this monster is a death sentence. It isn't just about their raw power or aggressive strikes, either. These beasts have a total resistance to magic, which is completely insane. Most amateur parties rely entirely on spells to get by. But this Null Lord just laughs at elemental attacks. Proud mages lose their minds when their powers fail them. And in their current state, things look incredibly grim. Only one of them does physical damage, and that is him. But his sword is shattered, and he is useless in close combat. Yan can't understand why his teammate is shouting at him to fight. Bitter regret eats him alive. He was the one who insisted on this. Now relying on magic has walked them right into a slaughterhouse. He looks around the bloody chaos and spots something totally bizarre. Some random helper boy is just casually mining ore in the background. He doesn't even care about the deadly fight happening right here. Suddenly, the helper's pickaxe vanishes into thin air. Yan freezes. Could he be a maker? It seems impossible, but desperation takes over. He doesn't care about weapon quality anymore. This is their only shot. Shin, he screams, "Are you a maker? Can you forge a sword?" Shin nods, but Yan immediately demands a sturdy, powerful sword. Shin starts to apologize, muttering about being a helper, but Yan cuts him off. This is no time for excuses. Doesn't Shin grasp their deadly situation? They will all die, Shin included, if they fail right here. Yet as Shin begins crafting, he lays down two strict conditions. First, once they clear this dungeon, Yan must forget Shin's abilities entirely. Second, Yan has to pay Shin a standard support member's fee. Yan just scoffs. He openly questions the actual quality of Shin's work. If Shin cannot even secure a proper job, how can this work? How could his handmade weapon possibly clear this high-level dungeon? Shin simply laughs at the irony. Good weapons make clears possible. He promises Yan that with the right tools, success is guaranteed. With that, Shin focuses. The loud clanging of metal already begins. Meanwhile, the scene shifts over to the massive and formidable Overkill Guild. They are one of the three dominant powerhouse guilds in Korea. A knock echoes at the president's door. He commands them to enter. His assistant steps in with an urgent request from the Awakeners Association. They need immediate help with a highly dangerous Rankarer dungeon. But the guild president already knows the real, unsaid truth. The association is desperate enough to meet any demand they make. He notes that other guilds have absolutely no choice but to comply. His assistant adds that only a few hunters possess those unique gate-breaching skills. As the president watches the news report on the hunter party, a particular face in the group photo immediately catches his keen attention. It is Shin. The president has definitely seen him somewhere before. Weeks ago, another Rankarer dungeon had suddenly appeared in Sukhotham. The president remembers seeing Shin standing right there at the scene. Yet this new report lists Shin as a simple helper. Survivors of these rare, chaotic events are incredibly hard to find. But Shin has survived two separate Rankarer parties with 0 casualties. How is that even possible? The president cannot ignore this coincidence. The assistant notes that Rankarer dungeons are appearing more frequently. Days ago, an E-rank dungeon catastrophically shifted to a B rank. It wiped out an entire party of hunters instantly. The pressure on the association is reaching a boiling point. She confirms that public criticism is mounting over their massive failures. They are responsible for analyzing and announcing every single dungeon rank. The president suggests their Trespass Guild members take on more monitoring commissions. They must watch this escalating situation. Then he asks another question. Has she found a rank or higher weapon maker yet? She shakes her head, having only found a B- rank Japanese weapon. She offers to let him test it, but he refuses. Anything below a rank instantly shatters the moment he releases his power. He orders her to keep searching, tired of breaking weapons. Suddenly, a man bursts in, shouting that something has happened. Tahin listened as the man quickly reported a new dispatch request from the association. A D-rank dungeon where their new recruits had entered as a free attack team. Tahin pressed for the actual rank after entry, making the man swallow hard. The dungeon was reanalyzed as a C rank, maybe higher. Tahin's face hardened. He could not lose those recruits. With urgency, he decided to go himself. Outside the dungeon gate, the media swarmed, broadcasting live. The crowd surged as President Tahin arrived, with the girl and the messenger close behind him. Reporters shoved microphones forward, shouting questions about the rampant dungeon rank errors. The association had sent a cooperation request to Overkill. Suddenly, one reporter yelled, asking if the president was there because his own guild. Members were trapped inside. A woman from the association pushed through, thanking Tahin for arriving. The attack team, she announced, had 6 hunters, 2 supporters, and a helper. All of them possessed pretty high qualifications. But that meant absolutely nothing now. The dungeon was C rank. Tahin cut the chase, asking how long they had been inside. Almost 2 hours, she grimly replied. He did not know how many survived, but he would do whatever he could. Tahin with Minhusu stood right before the swirling dungeon gate. She handed him a sword and he invoked his skill, Trespass, slashing the air. A blinding flare of energy erupted, tearing open a strange, dark void before them. The skill forcefully breached barriers, even dungeon gates, affecting only him. Leaving the gate intact, the sword shattered instantly and he tossed the hilt back to Minhusu, warning her to be careful. You too, she replied, and then he stepped into the darkness. Inside, heavy humidity clung to him, the air thick with heat and a putrid, reptilian stench he instantly recognized. No. Pollutants marred the floor, hinting at an intelligence higher than average. Monsters coupled with the dungeon's rank, this could only mean one thing. Lizardmen, he moved deeper, stepping over numerous dead monster corpses. The fallen lizardmen told a grim story, allowing him to estimate the size of the enemy group and their fighting capabilities. He recalled the preliminary report, the party's distress level now painfully evident. He braced for the worst-case scenario that they were all dead. Then a sudden rumble echoed through the air. Pushing forward, he found the party and a sight he had not anticipated. A hulking monster hammered a lone hunter, swords clashing as others fought for their lives. Watching from the fringes, Tahin grimly noted the obvious. The lizardmen were systematically dismantling the group. Their brutal speed and fluid movements marked them as vastly superior. One beast slammed into a hunter, sending his sword spinning uselessly through the air. Before the monster could finish off the disarmed man, Shin materialized. A sword shimmered into existence from thin air, magic coiling around his hand just in time to block the lethal strike. Still at a distance, Tahin's mind raced. Magic, what else could form a weapon from absolutely nothing? As Shin wielded a crafted blade, their gazes locked in a fleeting, sharp moment of mutual recognition. Shin swiftly counted the fighters, reaching Tahin, the 10th man. He frowned, muttering with strange certainty that only 9 had arrived. Tahin was completely baffled, with absolutely no idea what he meant. Just then, another a lizardman slammed a hunter to the ground, poised for the kill when Tahin plunged into the fray, his own sword drawn. Shin stared, shocked that Tahin, famous for never carrying a weapon, had actually jumped in. Shin narrowed his eyes, wondering if it was a sphere weapon. Meanwhile, Tahin met the lizardman's strike head-on, shouting for the other hunters to fall back. In a sudden blur, his blade became a whirlwind of slashes. Each strike flared with raw energy, cutting through the lizardmen and felling them instantly. I haven't even gone all out, Tahin thought. This weapon, though clearly B-rank, felt incredibly flimsy in his hands. As he dispatched the last of the immediate threats, another monster burst from the dark. Lunging straight at him, Tahin simply sidestepped, letting the beast sail past to crash heavily onto the dirt. Shin closed the distance. Does this kind of wear and tear always happen? He asked, eyes on the blade. Your skills seem to ruin weapons. Tahin narrowed his eyes. Was Shin trying to provoke him? Shin scoffed, telling him to use the weapon properly and try not to break any more of these fragile blades. Tahin's jaw tightened. He was utterly shocked when, with a flick of Shin's wrist, another weapon materialized. Shin was hiding some serious power here. He possessed a bizarre, almost supernatural skill far beyond anything Tahin had ever seen. Why would someone with such genius talent be relegated to a helper role? Tahin always thought those jobs were for low-grade supporters struggling for money. Shin reached out, grabbing Tahin's sword. There is one condition, he said simply. Shin's terms were absolute. Once Tahin cleared the dungeon, every trace of Shin's skill and identity had to be completely wiped. Tahin frowned. You think I can just forget on command? Shin countered, refuse. And I will smash every high-grade weapon you own. Tahin weighed the threat. He knew his skill could break the weapon instantly. But having an extra blade meant a real advantage. Reluctantly, he agreed, silently promising to forget. That is more like it, Shin grinned. Go wild. In a sudden flash, Tahin lunged forward, his blade flashing. He did not just deflect the lizardman's blow, he met it head-on, shattering the monster's crude blade. Shin watched in utter shock. He had expected a simple block. Instead, the monster's weapon shattered first. Tahin's control was far beyond anything Shin had anticipated. Could the blade itself truly be that much stronger? Intrigued, Shin's mind raced. A weapon maker who could manifest B-rank gear instantly. This was getting interesting. He decided to test the blade's full limits. Unleashing his strength, Shin plunged the weapon into the lizardman and triggered a fiery blast. In the same breath, he vaulted behind the beast, burying his blade in its head before another explosion erupted. The lizardman choked, spitting green blood as it crashed down. Tahin stood frozen, staring at the blood-slicked weapon Shin had just used. To his absolute shock, not a single scratch marred its surface. Before he could, Tahin tried to focus on his weapon, but shouting suddenly broke it. His guild's rookies burst into view. They were shouting his name. Rushing over, they cried out that they were safe and alive. Tahin relaxed. Everyone was okay. No serious injuries, a quiet relief. They explained how Shin stepped in to save them after weapons broke. Tahin turned to him. What is your name? He asked. Shin just stared back, wondering why a top hunter would care. I'm Tahan, he introduced himself. Finally, Shin stepped forward and answered. Shin quietly gave his name, then pointed to the dungeon entrance. He wanted to leave the loot, but Tahan cut him off. Come to the boss room, Tahan ordered, no exceptions. Shin protested, claiming he was just a simple helper hired today. Tahan scoffed, this was a glitched dungeon, nobody leaves yet. Shin still insisted that Tahan could easily solo the boss alone. But Tahan pointed out the massive flaw in that logical plan. His power shattered standard gear, making his ultimate skills completely useless. Shin smiled, my custom gear will hold, he promised calmly. We'll see, this error dungeon is different from any average raid. These monsters were tougher, and the boss would be pure nightmare. Shin finally relented, silently following Tahan down the dim, quiet corridor. The massive boss room opened up into absolute, mind-blowing chaos. There stood the giant Lizard King. Beside him stood a giant. Forget danger tears, Tahan snapped. We have to finish this thing now. If my sword breaks, we are done. No turning back. Shin just challenged him to put the blade to the test. Suddenly, the massive guardian lunged forward with a heavy, swinging swipe. Shin and Tahan moved together, dodging the giant claws perfectly. Tahan dashed in to counter, but a wave of pressure hit. Stunned but reacting instantly, Tahan leaped straight into the air. The beast pursued, claws aiming directly at Tahan's gleaming blade. The heavy clash launched Tahan even higher into the sky. The Lizard King leaped up, breathing a massive torrent of fire. Shin conjured a glowing shield, just in time to block flames. But the boss's tail lashed out, violently knocking Shin backward. Suspended in midair, Tahan yelled down, asking if he was just a blacksmith. Shin yelled back that shields make pretty great weapons, too. Tahan grinned, they would have a long talk about this later. The Lizard King whipped a heavy chain directly at him. Tahan caught it barehanded, wrapping it around his sword. The monster yanked the chain, pulling Tahan straight toward it. Stop playing around and fight properly, Shin roared from below. A second sword suddenly materialized in Tahan's free hand. You told me to test your custom gear, Tahan laughed. He let the bound sword vanish and closed the distance. His new blade became a blur of lethal, quick cuts. He hurled his sword, following with a heavy kick that sent the beast. Reeling, Tahan, a storm of fury, leaped up, his sword flaring with raw energy as he prepared to strike, but the Lizard King's gaze had already shifted to Shin, launching an attack, instantly a transparent barrier shimmered into existence to shield Shin. Annoyed Shin scoffed, did they really think those webs could threaten him? Beside him, Tahan, equally enraged, tensed up for their next move. Moments later, the dungeon gate, once pulsing crimson, finally settled back into a peaceful blue. Outside, the crowd murmured excitedly, wondering if the absolute impossible had happened and the dungeon was actually cleared. As the group merged, reporters swarmed Tahan, bombarding him with a massive wave of questions about the dungeon depths, the boss monster, and if everyone had made it out alive. Min pushed through the crowd, concern written on his face. Asking if he was hurt, Tahan waved him off, completely fine. The surrounding hunters erupted in praise, with one girl stepping forward. If it were not for him, she breathed, they would all be dead. Meanwhile, Shin presented the team leader with a bag of mana stones, stating his payment was already up front. He was done. The team leader effusively thanked Shin for his hard work, completely ignoring Tahan. Without another word, Shin vanished into the crowd. The reporters then quickly pivoted, thrusting their microphones right at Tahan, demanding to know how he cleared the dungeon so fast, suggesting it must have been easy. Tahan shook his head slowly in silent refutation. He opened his mouth to credit Shin, only to realize the creator was already long gone. Another girl spoke up then, her voice clear, saying everyone else was just blocking and working together, while Tahan handled the majority of threats alone. A boy asked how he even managed all that. His voice still shaky, since all their weapons had been completely destroyed. He had no idea how dangerous it really was, and would have been wiped out without Tahan. Hearing this, Tahan stared back in complete bewilderment, asking what they meant. The boy clarified he meant the weapons, which only lasted because of the person crafting them. He wanted to ask about the support member who came along, the helper who made their weapons, despite knowing he was just in a support role. He wondered if that guy actually had any special abilities. The boy's emphasis on special showed his uncertainty about the helper's actual power. The girl shrugged, unsure. Tahan, still completely baffled, turned to the others asking if they saw how the helper crafted the weapons. A collective murmur of deep confusion swept right through the entire group. Someone muttered that he must be talking about the pickaxe. Tahin scoffed at that ridiculous idea, but that same guy had wielded one then. Lost it along the way. Suddenly things clicked. They mined all those mana stones. Like, what is even going on here? Why did everyone forget about the weapons they received from him? He immediately flashed back to Shin handing him a sword with a cold command to forget everything. Rental pay, those exact words echoed in his mind. That exclusive skill belonged to an A-rank maker or higher. Min's voice suddenly cut through his thoughts. He stiffened. She noticed it too. Tahin shoved a container into the man's hands, then spun around, searching for Shin. Was he already gone? Had he disappeared? But unbeknownst to Tahin, Shin was actually nearby, hiding in plain sight. Min and the man stepped close, asking what was wrong with him. But Tahin just barked at Min to find Shin, back at his office. The reports came in quickly. Scouts had finally tracked Shin down earlier today. Shin had joined a 5-man party, alongside roughly 10 other hunters. They had all entered a D-rank dungeon located near Sampo. Tahin noted that Sampo was close. His men shifted around, quite nervous. One finally asked why he cared so much about a basic D-rank maker. Tahin paused. It makes you wonder how many geniuses hide like this. Outwardly, Shin seemed totally unremarkable, just a simple D-rank weapon maker. But Tahin knew better. Shin's weapon-renting skill shattered that weak illusion. His control over that rental skill was unlike anything Tahin had seen. This was no ordinary talent, it was an elite power. A skill capable of making a massive fortune, yet Shin used it strictly as a disguise to hide his identity. A blacksmith of this caliber belonged way beyond D-rank. Tahin knew their next meeting would clarify everything. No more doubts. He would finally get to unleash his full strength without worrying about his blade breaking. He had met plenty of famous master blacksmiths over the years, but not a single one of their creations could handle his immense strength. He had tested legendary blades, and every last one of them had shattered under his power. Even worse, most blacksmiths were completely restricted to basic designs, unable to forge what he actually needed. But Shin was a completely different breed. His work was next level. His gear broke all logic, making the impossible look pretty easy. With him, limits did not exist. Every massive challenge now felt totally doable. Missions Tahin failed before, just from lacking proper gear, seemed possible. Checking the dungeon timer, a standard D-rank run usually takes 4 hours for 5 people, but now had only an hour left. He turned to Min, asking for his schedule. She mentioned a 7 p.m. meeting. Cancel it, Tahin ordered. Already on his feet, he had to leave immediately because missing Shin was not an option. Meanwhile, deep in a dungeon, a young hunter stared in absolute shock at a dead boss. That ribbon on the floor was undeniably Shin's weapon. Its mana had crushed the boss. Shin had to be B-rank when the main tank's sword snapped earlier. They had prepared for a total wipeout, but then the quiet helper saved them all. The young hunter gaped at the unmatched quality of Shin's craftsmanship, admitting he had never seen anything like it. Deeply grateful, he thanked Shin, admitting they would have died. Without him, we must recruit him immediately, the boy urged. A girl nearby agreed, saying it was a crime he was just a helper. The boy agreed he definitely had real talent. Meanwhile, Shin was miles away. Lost in deep thought, he had used far more mana than expected. He never expected a party to struggle this badly in a standard dungeon. As he gathered the magic stones, a familiar wave of regret gnawed at him. If only he had possessed just a little more mana back then. He still remembered the suffocating heat that remained after the golem fell. That oppressive aura vanished once his reserves ran completely dry, never to return. The energy flowing through him now was barely rank D. Still, a quiet relief settled in as his crafting went smoothly. And his past memories kept resurfacing, helping in completely unexpected ways. The core maker skill was straightforward and highly intuitive. An item's quality scaled directly with his mana output. Yet the true potential of this skill remained hidden. Still, Shin understood one undeniable truth about how it worked. The deeper his knowledge of an object, the better the final product. As quality surged, his overall mana efficiency followed suit. The exact same mana input still yielded wildly different results. It all came down to the creator's level of mastery. This realization sent his mind racing through years of training. Material research, combat support, and lessons from seasoned hunters flashed by. Every painful detail from forgotten workshops clicked into place. The sheer thrill of it went far beyond his expectations. He kept mining, a growing certainty solidifying in his mind. He didn't fully grasp his new power, but things were changing. The quality of his creations was rapidly shooting up. Yet massive limitations still held his crafting back. Juggling his rental skills and crafting felt incredibly clunky. Gathering raw magic stones brought him back to harsh reality. High-grade mana technology was simply too expensive for him to afford. He quietly muttered that he just needed a few more mana points. Powerful items to boost his reserves were absolutely crucial. For now, he made a mental note to stock up on potions. His meager helper pay was barely enough to scrape by. Being a rank D maker left him with painfully few options. Still, his status window showed only 20% left for his goal. A few simple dungeon runs just wouldn't cut it anymore. Each run gave him barely over 1% total mana. The only way forward was a dangerous rank A- dungeon. Only those high-rank fields offered the massive absorption he needed. But the unpredictable difficulty of those zones was terrifying. His last run proved exactly how brutal they could be. He had barely survived, even with Tahin fighting beside him. Facing a rank C boss was a certainty he had to prepare for. For a rank D awakener, focusing on mana was his only path. His team leader's brief praise offered only a minor comfort. The long grind would still continue regardless of kind words. Then Tahin's voice suddenly cut through the air. A voice caught up, asking if he remembered. Shin's satisfaction evaporated instantly. He clearly had zero impact on Tian. Shin shot back, asking if he would believe a no. Tian simply offered a business card. Shin took it, eager to cut to the chase. Shin demanded to know what he wanted. Tian explained it was important. He only asked for a moment of his time. Then Shin's eyes widened at the card. Now get this, it was the Overkill Guild, a top 3 powerhouse. He was not in a position to deal with giants, not yet. Shin needed a quick exit, bluntly declaring he had no time. He claimed he had a dinner date, but a heavy hand stopped him. Tian promised he would not regret this, his grip unwavering. That is easy for a guild master with all the time in the world. Shin countered that it was not so easy for a lowly D-rank supporter. Tian shrugged, admitting defeat. Shin still bristled, but curiosity flared. Just how much had that massive rental fee actually stung him? Reluctantly, Shin agreed to a short talk, and they settled into a quiet corner. They sat inside a cozy traditional restaurant. Shin got straight to the point. What could a massive guild master possibly want with a weak D-rank supporter? Tian did not beat around the bush, explaining his class was a berserker. It granted overwhelming attack power, but came with a massive flaw. Almost no weapons could handle the immense pressure of an Emperor Berserker. Finding a weapon supplier that could match his absurd power was crucial. Tian had scoured the entire globe, making countless journeys everywhere. He visited the finest blacksmiths and the most renowned weapon makers alive. He left absolutely no stone unturned in his search for a master craftsman. He commissioned custom gear without hesitation, ignoring the astronomical cost. Yet every single sword he wielded up to that point had shattered. They all broke, every single one except the sword Shin made. Cold realization hit. That massive rental fee was pocket change to Tian. There was also definitely no such thing as a weapon nullification skill. Tian's casual confidence was deeply unsettling. Shin filed the lesson away. He had to be careful trying to outsmart high-level hunters. Tian noticed the shift in his mood and leaned forward, cutting in. He asked if Shin was unaffiliated and wanted to join Overkill. Tian promised top-tier treatment, offering a 10 billion won signing fee. That came with extra payments for operational expenses and big dividends. The contract would last 1 year, with massive automatic raises upon renewal. Just as Tian began explaining the fine print, Shin immediately cut in. He apologized and stated he had zero intention of joining any guild. He politely declined the offer. Tian sat back, finding nothing left to say. Shin stood up, thanked him for the meal, and turned to leave. Tian called out, but Shin kept walking. Min, who had watched silently, finally spoke. He asked why Tian offered those terms. They were absurdly generous. Tian shot back that if he were Shin, he would not question it. The weapon Shin forged has not even reached its peak potential yet. Yet it was the first sword that could take everything Tian threw at it. It is not just a feeling. Think about how many high-level weapons he shattered in just the past year. The realization suddenly hit Min, the guild masters. Weapon expenses were absolutely astronomical. It was not just their initial cost, but the constant replacement of gear that simply could not handle his power. Below a certain rank, his true abilities could not even be unleashed, if that is the case. Min countered, then that massive contract fee is a drop in the ocean. The real problem has always been that nobody, not even the absolute best smiths, could craft a weapon capable of enduring that level of power. Tian's gaze was sharp precisely, and Shin has that ability. That is why they must recruit him at any cost, no matter the offer. As Shin walked away, a thought simmered. One day, he would likely be turning down offers from the Overkill Guild itself, from Tahan. This offer was tempting, but it was still too soon. He would wait. Tahan would be back. Meanwhile, deep within a dungeon, goblins fell by the dozens. Blur and a boy's arm flew, severed by a mysterious figure. Another boy, frozen in horror, managed to gasp out, "Who are you?" The man, holding a massive sword, moved with a devastating grace that would haunt witnesses for years. Most would scream, beg, or simply pass out from the pain, but not this figure. This man, the one destined to become a hero, was different. He drove his blade into the first boy, killing him without a moment of hesitation. Second boy froze, completely stunned and confused, wondering what had just happened. Was this maniac killing them for their trophies? The man scoffed at that. He stated flatly that he does not explain himself to a waste of breath. About to die, a cruel smile flickered, unless of course they could somehow manage to defeat him, then he will share everything, so hurry and try. The boy's blood ran cold. This was no easy opponent. Standing still meant certain death. He would rather lose an arm or a leg than simply fall. With a desperate yell, he charged, but the man met him with a massive sword, blocking effortlessly before swinging back with brutal, crushing force. The boy's weapon was ripped from his grasp, soaring uselessly into the air. Stunned, the boy barely even registered the powerful kick that sent him sprawling. It was disappointing, the man muttered, though excitement sparked in his eyes. This was his first hero-ranked subjugation in a year, making the boy's weakness let down. Still, he conceded the kid showed real courage by challenging him, lying helpless on the ground. The boy finally realized his grim fate and pleaded for life. Coldly, the man promised to end it cleanly. A swift slash, and the boy was dead. As the lifeless body slumped, the man stepped past with a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. This had not even been a decent warm-up. The boy's final expression was one of sheer unfairness, but it did not matter. The official report would state they fought valiantly against the boss, dying heroic deaths. He casually tossed the body aside, a common end in this brutal place. Dungeon. Then he checked his growing collection of photos, trophies of the deceased. Only one thing felt strange: those heels. The energy they gave off unsettled him. He murmured, speaking directly to her, telling her to hide them or make them less obvious. The priestess arrived, a hurried apology on her lips, explaining she had rushed here, drawn by. He suddenly senses the undeniable presence of precious ingredients nearby. He arches an eyebrow, wondering what could possibly be so valuable. He scoffed, instantly dismissing the thought. Absolute idiots, all of them. He already warned her about the priestess, telling her to just wait a bit longer. She turned around, her voice sharp with curiosity, asking if they should actually go against the executives' demands. He just scoffed again, calling the guy a sensitive bastard. She calmly offered to clean up this messy situation first. It was her absolute specialty, but he shot back with a sharp reminder: don't forget their deal. She promised him an S-rank hunter, his sole reason for being there. Leaning in, he muttered that he had not even unleashed his full power yet and wanted to go all out. She nodded curtly, telling him not to worry. She would be in touch soon. Then she suddenly ripped open the corpses, belly staring intensely at the cavity, waiting. What crawled out next? Suddenly, a grotesque creature tore its way out of the dead flesh. Her eyes flashed with madness as she whispered, "The child," proving the Exasser's chilling prophecy was completely real. The scene shifts, focusing on a swirling portal, surrounded by a squad of armed hunters. Shin walks past them, heading straight toward a mysterious figure whose face is hidden behind a mask, holding a heavy weapon case. Shin stops dead. Pure shock washing over his face. It is Tahin, looking equally stunned and immediately asking the obvious question, what is Shin doing here? Shin snaps back, demanding answers. Tahin just grins, recognizing him. Shin does not play around. Only one person carries that case. So why is Tahin here? He simply answers he is clearing the gate, Shin's. Eyes widen, a D-rank gate. He is here for that, Tahin shrugged. The original guild member got sick, so he is just filling in, before Shin can ask anything else. A loud voice orders everyone inside. Tahin glances at Shin, telling him to move. As they walk, Shin's mind races. He knew Tahin would show up eventually, but not this incredibly fast. His entire plan needs a major rewrite now. Inside, Tahin turns to Shin and quietly asks why he refused the guild's massive offer. Shin snaps back, end of discussion. Nearby, a young guy nudges his friend, asking if she heard about the Shan Gate auction in Chunchin this morning. She nods, and he adds that the Hun Moon Guild snatched it up instantly. She agrees, mentioning her friend saw the insanely high bidding wars, where absolutely nobody else dared to compete. Overhearing this, Shin quietly wonders, why would the massive Hun Moon Guild want a C-rank gate? Did they find something unique? Inside, Tahin cuts in, asking if Shin is interested in buying gates too. Joining their guild makes B-rank gates and hire absolutely easy pickings. That guild name carries serious weight. Shin silently considers the temptation. To most awakeners, a massive guild's name is everything. It brings endless fame, lucrative contracts, and unmatched rewards. But more than that, it opens up the most exclusive doors. Guild members get priority tickets to high-level, special dungeons, and that kind of influence is never just about raw talent anymore. Political connections decide who gets the legendary loot hidden inside. The absolute best loot from those coveted gates always ended up with the giant guilds. Tahin leaned in. Every awakened hunter has some kind of goal, Shin. Whatever yours is, the Overkill Guild backing you makes it effortless to reach. Why reject it? Shin gave him a dead cold look. None of your business. He had his reasons, vague as they were. Besides, no one ever rejected an Overkill Guild invite, so he made things crystal clear. He was not joining anyone. No way, Tahin mused aloud. Was it trauma from the Dun Guild? Annihilation. Shin, I read that report. He paused. Or is there another reason? Whatever the truth, Tahin was not giving up easily. Soon, they pushed deeper. A recruit flinched. He stared in pure horror at the massive webs overhead. They moved on. Moments later, Tahin spoke. His voice was dead grave. They were entering monster territory. He noticed the group's massive inexperience. So he quickly explained what they were up against to kick things off. Did they read the recon report on their targets, the Legion Spiders? Alone, they were pretty weak, barely a threat, but they never fought solo. They swarmed, and the report estimated around 50 of them out there. Not a huge number, but he warned that their fangs held paralysis poison. Do not get bit, Tahin yelled out. Monsters, stick close, Shin was unfazed, telling them to forget the support and just prep for combat. Tahin instantly cut him off, a sharp steel edge entering his voice. Protecting support is essential. It is the rule, regardless of your ability or the situation. Shin scoffed, asking what kind of fool would actually follow that. Suddenly a voice cut through. Spiders, a sword-wielding recruit. Trembled, he took a shaky breath. Just stick to training, we can win this. A spider lunged. The boy moved. His blade flashed in a single effortless slice, splitting the beast in two. Another recruit braced behind his heavy shield, while a mage girl unleashed a crackling burst of magical energy, tearing into the oncoming arachnids. For a D-rank squad, Tahin grudgingly admitted their teamwork was pretty solid. He would not have to babysit them, but as his eyes swept over the massive horde, things got real. There were way more than 50 spiders here. The sheer number was terrifying. They surged. Tahin drew his heavy flame-throwing weapon. It spat intense flames as he met the charge, realizing their durability was laughably low. Honestly, he did not even need the steel. A quick pulse of sword energy shredded them. At this rate, they would clear the raid easily. Without even dulling his steel, then a sharp cry cut through the chaos. Shin heard it, hunters screaming for help near the river, which was swarming with an impossible tide of spiders. The shield-wielding boy yelled that they just kept coming, and barely anyone had even done the recon. Another frantic voice screamed that things were getting messy. The mage girl clutched her staff tight. Completely out of mana, Tahin suggested they move toward the trouble, his gaze flicking to Shin as he told him to follow him. Go ahead, Shin interrupted coldly. I will finish here. Tahin stared in surprise. But before he could argue, a spider lunged at Shin. Get down, Tahin roared, instinctively fearing the stubborn hunter would get caught in the deadly crossfire. The hunter swung wildly, but Shin moves faster, eyes snapping open. Power solidifies into a sharp square shape directly over the attacking beast. A sudden blur and he unleashes it. The creature shrieks. It collapses dead before hitting the ground. Shin weighs his current options. Out of everything he can forge, a sword holds the finest craftsmanship. It is perfect for chaining strikes and channeling massive power. Sadly, doing that consistently demands way too much of his current mana. But if he can focus his energy into one single point, nothing else comes close. He gathers his force, shaping it into a pure shockwave instead of steel. It acts just like a sword, then with a wide swing he lets fly. Every nearby monster is instantly sliced in half by that single strike. Tahin just stares, completely stunned. Shin stands calmly on a dead beast. The mysterious blade remains wedged inside the giant monster. Yet it just cleared out a massive zone in seconds. Honestly, neither can we. Tahin cannot believe the scale of this attack. 10 seconds and dozens of lethal spiders are completely wiped out. Did Shin somehow summon that weapon? He quickly shakes off the thought. Shin is supposed to be a basic support class, he tells himself. Meanwhile, Shin notices Tahin staring. Time to act. The remaining hunters are cornered, surrounded by a wall of claws. The monsters are closing in on them by the second. Snapping out of his daze, Tahin realizes how bad things look. Questions can wait. Shin simply points straight at his bag. A silent command to handle this. Nobody would believe a helper did it. Tahin gets the message and charges forward, brandishing his blade. A whirlwind of sharp steel begins shredding through the spider horde. Soon the final monster drops. One rescued hunter gasps out a thank you. They admit they would have died without him stepping in. He never expected this formidable warrior to lead the Overkill Guild. Tahin apologizes for hiding his identity, keeping things strictly professional. He explains he was simply scouting out the dungeon alone. A girl in the party stares, utterly stunned by his modesty. She cannot believe this elite warrior is the one who saved them. Watching him slice through beasts with such grace was truly something else. Blushing, she asks for a photo. Then, a sudden arrival ruins the moment. Using the distraction, she walks over to the boy holding the lantern. Shin catches up to them, gasping and apologizing for being late. They start collecting loot while heading deeper into the dark cavern. No other guild masters are around, and a new path opens up. Suddenly, the armored guy speaks up, advising them to stop the raid. It is a disappointing setback, but absolutely necessary right now. The other hunter is confused, asking why they would turn back now. The armored fighter explains that the massive number of spiders is abnormal. The dungeon layout contradicts everything in their official recon report. He warns that dimensional gates always hide completely unpredictable dangers. These dimensions are completely alien, harboring bizarre beasts and landscapes that defy all logic. Dungeons remain a total mystery to humanity for rookie hunters who just awakened. Having exact information is everything, life or death. Few can actually adapt to these bizarre environments, and failing. A raid usually means a prompt death sentence, game over. This lethal reality makes expert scouts absolutely essential. Those with special sensory or concealment abilities specialize in dangerous, high-risk reconnaissance missions. These efforts drastically boost survival rates, indispensable. The young, armored team leader stresses the facts. Their scouts boast 98% accuracy. This is no simple mistake. Still, they cannot completely rule out a rare ranking error. Another hunter hesitates, pointing out that Tahin is right here. Why not push through? The leader understands their impatience, but warns they have already relied on Tahin too much. One wrong move now, and everyone ends up in grave danger. Undeterred, the eager young hunter presses on for personal reasons. Is there no other option, he asks, as the girl nods. The leader snaps back, is your goal worth more than your life? Once we step inside that boss chamber, there is no turning back, none. He demands a prompt retreat, but Tahin suddenly speaks up, perfectly calm. He says he is fine to continue as part of this team. Even if his primary goal is just investigating, they should keep going. If they can finish this, why stop? Besides, the boss room holds his answers. Hearing this, the grateful armored leader shamelessly bows down in deep thanks. He begins to ramble about leadership, but Tahin waves him off. Tahin tells him not to worry, just lead like you always do. With that settled, the leader agrees and gestures for everyone to follow him. The 5 hunters march deeper until they reach a massive gate. Sensing the boss on the other side, he calls for a brief huddle. Their target is the Legion Queen, a simple D+ rank threat. Her actual combat strength is quite low, and she mostly spawns spiders. But that was only the initial report. Stay alert. We have absolutely no clue what is actually waiting behind this gate. Let us head inside. The young girl conjures a glowing orb of light. Tahin senses nothing weird, but the leader still urges absolute caution. This is the boss chamber after all, and there she is. The giant queen spider sits surrounded by a handful of smaller kin. A collective sigh of relief escapes the girl. Everything looks normal. She wastes zero time, launching a massive bolt of lightning magic. The blast slams the queen spider down. Is it dead already? Easy. Wait, it is never that simple. The atmosphere suddenly feels heavily distorted. Sensing extreme danger, the leader screams for a retreat as a shriek echoes. Out of the darkness, a horrifying monster rises, the Arakan. The deadly spider body supports a grotesque human torso. Tahin snaps into position, recognizing the B-rank threat. He knows his usual swordplay will not even scratch this monster. So his opening strike must be everything, a single devastating blow. Tahin swings, pours everything into a single, fatal blow. A sharp crack, his blade shatters into pieces. No sword, the killing blow is suddenly impossible. The beast Iraq lunges, but Shin suddenly tosses him a temporary weapon. By some time, Shin yells, "While I forge a real one." Shin tries to channel his mana, but his reserves feel empty. Completely drained, he pushed his reserves far too much. He relies on a single daily potion just to keep going. Downing the liquid, he feels a sharp, familiar surge of power. It is simply not enough. He cannot forge a proper weapon yet. As he begins the frantic forge, he realizes this is no C rank. A B rank threat, this is a massive mistake. Seriously, they are insanely lucky Tahin is even here. Without him, the entire party would have been wiped out instantly. Now it is a desperate, uphill battle against a terrifying foe. Iraq clashes with Tahin in a violent storm of steel and sparks. Shin estimates the beast is as strong as 5 elite hunters. He cannot win alone, Shin yells to the group. Get ready, he barks, the monster's raw killing intent has shifted. The party leader stares in shock, wondering who this kid is. Why would someone this gifted just be playing a helper role? Maybe Shin is Tahin's secret weapon, brought for this very moment. Shin ignores them, he has work to do. He quickly crafts 3 weapons custom-made for their specific skills. Grab these and fight, he commands, or get out of here. More spiders swarm, he trusts their call to survive. The boy grabs his new blade and feels an insane rush of power. Every single swing slices through the beastly spiders like wet paper. Nearby, the girl unleashes a devastating spell to clear the area. The team leader stands frozen, the weapons are the only difference. Talk about an upgrade, these weapons just amplified them tenfold. Who is this blacksmith? Meanwhile, Tahin is painted in green blood. Holding the front line gets harder as the massive Orochen charges in. No choice now, he lunges forward, sword flashing. To his shock, the crude weapon holds up perfectly under the strain. Suddenly, a horrifying wave of grotesque spider monsters erupts from below. The girl panics, but the leader immediately spots their path. They target Tahin. Get back, he roars out. A grim realization, the Orochen kept them in check. Things escalate, her dormant abilities are waking up. The swarm hits, Tahin grasps the horrific truth. Sacrificing them, draining their life force to heal, completely hopeless. They had to kill every last spider. Tahin charged, desperate to amplify. His final strike, his blade flared with blinding light, then shattered. Splintering metal sparked cold dread. Shin watched. Whistling low at a display of power far exceeding his wildest expectations, he'd poured every drop of mana into the blade, never expecting Tahin to shatter it. Without hesitation, Shin conjured a new sword. Use this. No. Ordinary single-edge blade, this was Shin's ultimate, toughest masterpiece, the moment. Tahin gripped the hilt, a sudden wave of raw power pulsed. Instantly he realized he could obliterate everything in one massive swing. he channeled his flares, coding the massive two-handed sword and braced himself, though completely unfamiliar with its weight. This massive weapon was his only choice to survive this fight. Lifting the blade, he unleashed a monstrous, explosive slash that shredded the origin. Absolute devastation. Shin watched closely, instantly understanding. This massive explosion was a berserker skill Tahin had finally awakened properly for the very first time, but such raw force always demands a toll. Devouring the user's sanity, Tahin watched as the giant monster split cleanly in half. A sudden, chilling thought crossed his mind. What if that blade had shattered? He had barely managed to hold onto his own mind. Had he hesitated, the darkness would have swallowed his consciousness entirely. This was his second close call since awakening, a terrifying reminder of his limits. He was wielding a dangerous, double-edged sword, looking over at Shin. Tahin realized this guy was no ordinary awakened. The moment Shin's true capabilities came to light, the entire world would notice them. They stood over the Origin's corpse, which pulsed with an incredibly heavy mana signature unlike any dungeon boss they had ever encountered. Shin broke the silence, his voice cutting through the heavy air, asking if he felt anything from it. Tahin shook his head. Not dead yet, but they had cleared all the remnants. Shin nodded in silent agreement. Even high-tier hunters couldn't sense mana this dense. Then, a sudden shock. Tahin's passive skill, mana absorption, flared to life. Suddenly, a brand new skill materialized on his system screen. Demonic weapon production. A cold chill followed. He reread the screen, trying to comprehend what these demonic weapons actually were. The demonic realm was a known legend, yet Tahin recalled absolutely nothing specific or concrete enough to even visualize crafting such things. Momentary disappointment over having no direct mana rewards was quickly shrugged off. It is fine, he muttered. The Origin had already pushed him halfway to his mana cap, and he knew the rewards would keep coming. Tahin waved Shin over, clearly wanting a serious chat. Shin, highly curious, asked what was on his mind. Surprisingly, Tahin bowed deeply, offering a sincere apology. He admitted that his aggressive push to recruit Shin into his own guild was incredibly impolite, both personally and as a guild master. He offered his deepest regrets. Shin stood frozen, completely shocked by this sudden shift in attitude. The party leader watched in absolute disbelief as Tahin bowed lowly before a low-rank helper, but Shin's unbelievable feats had already. He clearly wasn't some ordinary guy. The leader's mind raced, wondering if Shin was a hidden talent for the Overkill Guild. Just then, they returned. They searched everywhere. Absolutely nothing left, the boy reported. The girl chimed in. The Origin must have cleared out all the monsters. The boy muttered, still deeply impressed. That weapon is just insane. Slicing through monsters like butter, no energy needed either. The girl nodded, never seen a weapon maker like him. Any guild ties? The leader ignored them, motioning for a retreat to contact the association. Still curious, the boy asked if they really had to rush out. The girl agreed. She wanted to thank Tahin and their helper first. But the leader whipped around, his voice urgent, practically shoving them away. Just get out of this disgusting place. The boy nodded quickly. He told the leader to ease up. They were already leaving. The leader glanced back, certain that helper was tied to the guild. Bailing now was smart. No need to draw unwanted attention to themselves. Getting tangled in a major guild's internal drama, too exhausting to contemplate. Still, showing off that much power so easily felt very strange. Big guilds usually play it safe, always prioritizing their own security. Shin nodded in agreement. Everything the leader said made perfect sense. Even with Tahin's rental offer, bowing to others felt out of character. But right then, Tahin cut in with a solid promise. The guild wouldn't bother Shin again, no more tailing, period. Still, they weren't quitting. This was a massive opportunity for them. Tahin wanted a contract, guaranteeing Shin would love the terms. Bright and early the next morning, Shin arrived at the guild. Min was already waiting for him, offering a very warm smile. She introduced herself as the attending secretary, managing his contract. She handed him the paperwork. Shin thanked her, a bit surprised. Tahin had promised quick contact, but this was incredibly fast. He didn't expect to hear from them first thing in the morning. Min clarified that Tahin had ordered her to expedite the process. She admitted she'd been wondering why things were so incredibly rushed. This room was a special reception area within the guild. It boasted exceptionally strict security, completely sealed off. Min assured him that any leaks here were utterly impossible. She passed him the contract with the terms outlined in the dungeon. Everything Tahin had promised was officially put down on paper. Although changing things would take time, the contract wasn't permanent. Shin should feel free to voice any changes he wanted. He scanned the document. It was exactly as Tahin had described. Still, seeing it written down made it feel undeniably real. He set the paper down, telling Min he was ready. Shin recalled Tahin's words about being an unofficial supporter. Suddenly it clicked. Tahin's refusal to join wasn't just a whim. He needed to hide his identity. If Shin's hunch was right, everything changed. This deal was pretty perfect. The guild would secretly supply him with rare, top-tier ingredients and discreet gate access, everything completely off the books, a formal contract. Yes, but every detail would be handled in absolute secrecy. Still, Shin had to ask why they were so generous. Tahin smiled thinly. It was not free. His condition was simple. Shin would handle his personal requests, no pressure. Though if a job felt wrong, Shin could refuse. But what if he only took the support and did not help? Shin pressed him. Tahin's smile widened, assuring Shin that it was perfectly fine. The contract's real purpose was simple: to forge a link and keep him from joining anyone else, taking actual commissions. That was just a bonus, a show of good faith. Footsteps echoed outside, growing louder. Right on time, Tahin murmured. Two men strode in, introducing themselves as the Hunter Association team. One partner gave a curt nod, while the other looked at Tahin, asking if he was all right. The first investigator cut in. We need to go. I will get your statement outside. Tahin turned back to Shin, his gaze expectant. He hoped for a positive response, but then his tone softened. If this was too much burden, Shin did not have to accept. His abilities were worth far more than any contract. Shin paused, his original plan running through his mind. Impress Tahin, secure a guild connection. Without committing fully, but honestly this offer was just too good. He made his choice, asking when the support starts. Min beamed, producing a small box. Right away, she declared, telling him to just say the word. She held out the box, a gift from Tahin to celebrate. He apparently found something pretty useful in Aaron's room. Shin opened the box just enough for a peek, then snapped it shut, thanked her, and tucked it carefully into his bag. He handed Min a folded list of requested materials, asking where he could pick them up. Min raised an eyebrow at the massive list, promising them within a week. She admitted she might be crossing a line, but doubted they would even do him much good. Shin just nodded, not planning to use them. Anyway, he stood up, already heading for the door. He had someone else to meet. Time to move. He headed over to another building to wait. A quick glance at his phone confirmed it. She was due any second. Then Gio appeared, an A-rank hunter. Her presence pulled him back to a stark memory. Specifically a forest clearing, where Gia had carved through a monster with chilling effortless grace. That was right after the selection, when they hailed her as the prodigy hunter, the god archer. Gia walked straight to the reception desk, presenting her card and requesting entrance to the training gate. The lady behind the counter stared. Immediately recognizing her A-rank insignia, she asked if she wanted the C-rank gate. Her voice tinged with awe. Gia politely but firmly shook her head, requesting the D-rank gate instead. The clerk and a nearby man exchanged a look of sheer confusion. The clerk knew Gia was officially an A-rank, but it had not been long since she was recognized, and she had barely cleared any gates. She had minimal experience for her status. The man had seen plenty of lower ranked awakens throw in the towel and abandon the hunter life altogether. But an A-rank wanting a D-rank gate, unheard of. It felt like Gia was slipping fast, right to the edge of demotion. See, ranks are about one thing: mana absorption. When that blue energy bled through reality, it flooded everyone, but carrying that power, that varied wildly. Some could hold an ocean, others barely a drop. More mana meant more devastating abilities. The association watched these levels closely, categorizing anyone past a certain threshold as an awakened. Then they sorted them into strict ranks. Once sorted, a rank was usually yours for life. But insane raid performance could earn you a promotion. Conversely, a bad slump led straight to demotion. Gia quietly finished filling out her form, pushing it across the counter. The receptionist promised to process it, then hesitated. Are you going in with a partner? She asked. Gia flatly declined. So the receptionist offered to put her on the recruitment list. Rules required at least 2 people, with no other D-rank requests. Active, she faced a long wait. Gia wondered if she could just go. In alone, it was possible, but she needed a solo permit. Gia had not registered one. That meant passing a brutal practical test. "Do you want to sign up?" she asked. Gia declined, choosing to wait. The receptionist shifted gears, reminding her that her first hunter renewal was due in a month. Gia probably already knew. But keeping her A-rank status required either high-level gate experience or passing the dreaded, incredibly difficult A-rank practical exam. Given her recent streak of failures, that test was her only hope. A formal notice would arrive soon. The receptionist wished her luck. Gia thanked her, but a bitter thought settled, even requesting a training gate was a complete nightmare. She felt crazy for coming in person to deal with all these people. In her head, she kicked herself. She absolutely could not afford demotion. But now she had to snap out of it. Get a grip. It is just a D-rank gate. What happened last time will not repeat itself. Take it slow. Restart and everything will be fine. Just as the receptionist started to speak. Look at that, a notification flashed. A D-rank request finally popped up. Perfect, and since she was going in alone, the partner rule was completely moot. She slammed the agree button. Minutes later, Gia stood before the shimmering gate. Her old gear felt weirdly foreign. It had been way too long, making every strap feel awkward. Before she could step inside, a man approached. He introduced himself as Shin, her assigned supporter, hoping they would work well together. Gia bowed quickly. Shin apologized for being late, gesturing politely toward the shimmering portal. Gia nodded, telling him she would take the light on this run. Shin knew Gia was an A-rank hunter, or rather, she should have been. She started with massive potential, but a streak of failed tests demoted her all the way to C rank. Yet, despite everything, despite the demotion, she earned the title of God Archer, and it was not just for show. Becoming a player revealed her hidden talent, and Shin knew all about it. He knew exactly what it was, a power she could have unlocked without the system. He was dead set on helping her awaken this power. Later that day, they set out. They entered the dungeon world. Goblins already roamed the dark forest as Gia waited. She hunkered down, scanning the treeline. She felt pure relief seeing real monsters. It proved her expensive mana-sensing gear was not a total waste. Turning to Shin, she apologized and asked if she could handle this group alone. She promised to share the loot and pay him handsomely, but Shin shrugged. He waved off her worries, telling her he could provide arrows if things got rough. Gia nodded her thanks, already slipping into position and activating her skills. Steadying her breath, she silently told herself not to get nervous. Then she took aim. A single goblin dropped instantly. The others surged forward, charging hard, but Gia did not hesitate. Another arrow flew, dropping more targets. Shin watched with a flicker of surprise. He had not seen her fight like this since she first became a player. Her power beat an A rank, but without precision, it was useless. Gia narrowed her eyes, counting on at least one of her shots hitting. At this speed, she calculated she could fire at least 4 more shots. 2 shots, then it is over. Suddenly, a goblin bugle blared. Within moments, Gia was completely swarmed and froze in momentary panic. Where to shoot, what to do, goblins lunged, but Shin acted. Giant swords materialized, forming an instant barrier around her. Stepping closer, he asked for her help. Gia stared, utterly bewildered. Was he not just a D rank? He admitted he could not last solo. Gia hesitated, but Shin was already darting straight toward the monsters. Disappearing behind a bush, he hissed at her to use all her power. He told her to shoot. Despite her confusion, Gia nodded, hardening her resolve. She aimed and unleashed a deadly arrow exactly where he pointed. Did she hit it? Shin's confident voice suddenly cut through her racing thoughts. He told her she had opened the path and they had to run. There was no time for questions. They bolted and burst into a cave. Nestled against the mountain, Gia caught her breath. Was this actually safety? Or was it just a temporary hiding spot? The goblins seemed gone. But her instincts screamed caution, not after this. Shin remained unnervingly calm. Either way, they still had to move. They needed to move fast. Gia cut the tension, calling it a day. She promised his compensation, but Shin shook his head. It was not over yet. The alert goblins would sweep the area. It was too dangerous to leave. Worse, they had likely lost their rescue player during the chaotic sprint. Their only option was to wait. Gia looked shocked, asking when they could leave. Shin stared into the distance, half a day at least. Maybe longer. Jia reeled at the thought of waiting that long. Actually, Shin was lying. Goblins lacked any real coordination. It would likely disperse within 30 minutes. The real problem lay elsewhere. Something far more dangerous, the area master, in her current shaken state. Jia would probably believe anything he said, but convincing her. To step inside the cave with him was a massive hurdle, and he doubted. She would agree there was simply no other way. Jia's voice sounded small. Choked with apologies, she mumbled that it was all her fault, remorse etched. Across her face, she deeply regretted not fighting those goblins properly and for insisting on venturing out alone, causing a fresh wave of trouble she was bound to cause. They were trapped in a D-rank dungeon, a place she felt someone of her low skill level should never have entered. It all felt so surreal, watching her spiral like this. Shin snapped, cutting through her self-pity. If she was sorry, then just grant him one single favor. Jia blinked in confusion, asking what he meant. Shin gestured toward the cave, saying they had time to talk inside, once. Inside, the freezing air did little to calm Jia's racing thoughts, and a rank hunter she might be, but her real dungeon experience was incredibly low. She struggled to follow Shin's vague explanations, wondering if he actually needed her help. Then, one word cut through: elite monster. The pieces instantly clicked. Shin nodded. Of course she did not know, since this was her first training gate. He explained the dungeon layout was not common knowledge. Beyond the main boss, there was usually a secondary threat, an elite monster 1 rank. Below the boss, this cave was its lair. He had tried forming parties, only to get rejected, and he could not face the threat alone. Jia was the only leader who had accepted him as her team supporter. Watching her reaction, Shin worried he had overstepped with such a wild request. But Jia's resolve firmed as she agreed. It felt like the right thing to do, especially since Shin had just saved her from mortal danger. She knew the sting of being rejected by groups. Repayment was long overdue. But just as Jia committed to helping him, her mana detector screamed. An urgent, sharp beep echoed through the cave. The elite was finally here. Get back, Jia yelled, shoving Shin behind her, even for an elite. This was still a D-rank dungeon. One solid shot should end it. She loosed a swift, precise arrow straight at the approaching beast, but with a terrifying burst of speed, the monster easily deflected her shot. Jia gasped in absolute shock, and honestly, can you even blame her? Her calculations were dead wrong. She would need every ounce of her power. As the beast lunged, Jia froze. Shin yanked her backward just in time, sending them both tumbling as the attack whizzed right past them. This close call snapped her out of her trance. Dread seized her. Memories of cruel, scathing criticism began rushing back into her mind. An angry girl from her past had accused Jia of almost killing her. How could she be an archer if she could not even aim? She had shrieked at Jia, dismissing her tearful apologies as useless excuses. To her, Jia's rank meant absolutely nothing, promising to humiliate her. Shortly after, Jia was kicked out, desperate to find another party. But she faced constant rejection, as cruel whispers followed her everywhere. Rumors are everywhere, branding her a failed A-rank hunter. One voice scoffed. She almost wiped out her entire team in a dungeon. Another voice chimed in. Heard she cannot even defeat a weak monster. D-rank parties will not touch her. What happened to her talent? Is this her forever? The cruel questions echoed. Jia blocked out the torrent of voices, the heavy weight of their harsh words. She thought of birds, a quiet, dull ache. Maybe she should just quit. Now even Shin was getting dragged directly into her chaotic mess. Yet the elite monster was not even attacking. It just parried her strikes. It was like the beast was mocking her. Jia blinked in utter confusion. Shin suddenly stepped right between her and the giant beast. He was impossibly calm. Shin told her to stay focused, even if this made absolutely no sense to her. If she could follow his lead, they would win. His grim resolve hardened. In this absolute chaos, it had to activate. He just needed to buy time. Look closely at the monster, he instructed her, his voice low and urgent. She would see the spot. When she did, she had to strike with everything. Jia stood up, a strange, prickling sensation suddenly creeping across her skin. Every nerve ending felt alive and buzzing. It was incredibly unsettling. Yet she pushed past the discomfort and drew her massive bow. And look at this, her target is completely clear. This is her shot. She funneled every single ounce of her raw strength into one final, deadly arrow. With a fierce cry, she let it fly. Shin watched her, completely breathless. The arrow hit its mark perfectly. The beast detonated, flying backward in a blast. It worked, the conditions were fully met, even if it looked totally random. Shin knew the steep cost was worth it. A massive gaping hole now marred the chest. With a heavy shudder, the giant beast finally toppled to the ground. Shin murmured to her, asking if the blooming sensation felt entirely unfamiliar. He knew his method was extreme, but there was no other way. To truly awaken her powers, he had to trigger this exact feeling. Jia's mind reeled. Who was this guy, and how did he predict everything? What did awakening even mean? He simply told her not to rush things. He assured her they had plenty of time, but Jia wanted real answers. She demanded he stop deflecting, but before she could push him any further, a sudden wave of dark exhaustion washed over her, and she collapsed completely. Shin hoisted her onto his back, muttering that good allies are hard to find. At least that part was handled. Slowly, they emerged from the dark cave. When Jia finally woke up, she was absolutely mortified by her own behavior. She explained that she had not felt like her usual self at all. Being so incredibly rude to her twice-over savior made her cringe hard. She apologized profusely for her doubts and for fainting. Shin waved it off. He told her it was fine since everyone was safe. The monsters were dead. Tears welled up in her eyes. Then Shin asked for his necklace back. Jia stood up, retrieved the item, and gently handed it back to him. The moment he saw its changed color, he knew she had used its power. He reminded her that this artifact only came from A-rank dungeons. Dungeons like Harpy's Refuge, its true power lay in enhancing her senses. Under highly specific, extreme conditions, when activated, it instantly pushes a user's senses way past normal human limits, unlocking transcendental perception. But here is the real catch. Meeting those strict conditions is the hard part. Their emotions must shatter. And for someone like Jia, the ultimate trigger was raw terror. He confessed he had deliberately orchestrated this entire nightmare. He built an environment designed specifically to terrify her, brutal. Sure, but he knew this gamble was her only shot at awakening. Items like this Muic sensation are ridiculously rare, he had given. Upon ever acquiring one, yet Tahin managed to snag a piece in less than 2 days, a feat only possible because Shin paved the way so smoothly. Still, Shin knew this was only the very beginning. Jia had barely scratched the surface. She needs intense, brutal training. To regain the overwhelming power of her past prime, her immediate task: create a safe zone to focus strictly on monsters. To do that, she must switch weapons. Powerful as she already was, moving from to a longbow would drastically extend her range, keeping those beasts away and preventing the kind of paralyzing panic she had just survived. There are other crucial skills to hone, but this was the priority. Her sudden, deep gratitude leaves Shin completely speechless. She spills everything from her fears to the magical pendant, she thought. Death was certain, but clutching that artifact broke a lock deep inside her. The surrounding world slowed, a strange connection blossomed, and glowing targets suddenly mapped themselves onto the monsters, guiding her deadly arrows. Every shot hit with absolute precision. Honestly, despite her A- rank, she always felt like a pathetic D-rank in skill and temperament. Trying to improve only deepened her self-disappointment, but now, simply standing beside him, she feels her power skyrocketing. She is finally realizing her true potential. For once, a real excitement for herself surges through her soul, and she rambles on at length about it all. Before she can continue, Shin gently cuts in, telling her that going alone is suicide. He slips her his phone number, urging her to call if she ever needs help. She beams, happily accepting, promising to share her own, but before she can, a message from Tan buzzes his phone, forcing Shin to suggest they connect once they are out of the field. The scene snaps to the association headquarters, where Tan is already on the phone with Shin, offering a quick thanks. Before promising to call back after his briefing, he vows to assist Shin, adding that the gear Shin gave him previously saved his skin. Shin, safely out of the training zone and parting ways with Jia, feels glad the device worked, thanking Tan again for his promised support before hanging up. As Tan waits, Min suddenly steps into the office. The president gave orders to deploy immediately. Even so, Min cannot shake this deeply unsettling feeling. Normally, the association president issues official papers instead of sending a shady, verbal summon for Tan. Commissions are always brutal, But a direct emergency call like this means only one thing. An S-rank gate has reopened, but Tan simply reassures her that everything is fine. Shin agreed to help, fully confident that fighting like before would keep him safe. Securing a close connection with Shin is proving to be his absolute smartest move. Min notices how much Tan's mood has improved since that dungeon raid in Iraq. It clearly has everything to do with that mysterious new weapon creator. He is different now, and his talk of unlimited support still intrigues her. Even more shocking are the incredibly generous conditions offered by the guild master. Even though Tan is no longer a member of the unstable berserker class, he is now more calculated and cool-headed than anyone she knows. This sudden shift makes her wonder if Shin is actually highly capable. But then again, a simple D-rank hunter creating such masterworks feels impossible. Designing a weapon that could satisfy a powerhouse like Tan is highly unlikely. Since Tan rarely mentions him, Min decides to investigate this mysterious creator herself. Arriving at the meeting room, an attendant greets Tan and asks if he is alone. Tan pauses for a moment, wondering if he was supposed to bring someone along. The attendant confirms they expected 2 different guild masters to arrive today. Since Tan is alone, he can head inside first, though he asks who is coming. Before the assistant can say he just arrived, a sharp voice cuts through the air. Someone calls out to Tan, asking if he has been staying busy lately. Tan and Min spin around, instantly recognizing the man whose presence grates on them. A cocky smirk plays on his lips. He stands there, gloating. It is none other than Kim Muk, the arrogant rival guild master. He immediately sizes Tan up with a dismissive glance, completely unimpressed by his presence. Tan merely tightens his jaw, refusing to give him the satisfaction. Kim Muk is without a doubt the most infuriating person he has ever known. Kim steps closer, delivering his words with a heavy layer of false praise. He remarks that while the Overkill Guild has its moments, the leader is the issue. Tan shoots back coldly, saying he has no time for these ridiculous provocations. Kim shrugs mockingly, asking if he is simply too busy these days. He taunts Tan for constantly chasing low-ranked dungeons. Min clenches her fists. The pure disrespect makes her blood boil. Ignoring her obvious fury, Kim continues to boast about his own raids. He claims their only goal is to clear dungeons, not to play hero. He claims they operate on their own terms, no accidents, just results. Before Min can snap back, Tan places a restraining hand on her arm. He firmly orders the attendant to open the door so they can meet the president. The attendant nods and opens the door to announce them. From inside the room, President Han Chaoman's deep voice booms out. He sighs that those 2 troublesome leaders have finally arrived. Tan and Kim step inside, leaving Min stranded in the hallway. She slides down to the hallway floor outside, letting out a soft sigh. A polite staff member appears, offering her a hot cup of tea. Behind closed doors, President Han wastes absolutely no time. He reveals that an urgent request was issued for both of them 3 days ago. Things look grim. A strange head appeared and vanished in the suburbs. A rank error dungeon, Tun wondered, but the chairman simply shook his head. There is not enough confirmation. They cannot even measure the gate's mana. Kim flinched at the terrible news, while Tun found the whole situation utterly baffling. Measurement an anomaly unlike any they had encountered. Gate ranks were usually determined by 2 methods. Either they used a specialized instrument to assess the gate's mana directly, which usually matched the level of monsters within, or they compiled reports from association scouts, rank error dungeons. Occur when a gate's mana rapidly increases, the chairman clarified, but this situation was different. No measurements had even been made, had they sent scouts to investigate. Tun pressed. The chairman's jaw tightened. 5 teams, none came back. Kim slammed his fist on the table. They did not know the rank and had no intel to share. They did not even inform him immediately. He leaned forward, his voice becoming a low growl. This was not just about passing the buck. They had no idea how long this unknown gate would stay open. Left unchecked, monsters would breach. They had seen it before. Every single time it was a bloody nightmare. The chairman opened his mouth to speak, but Tun cut him off. Shameless maybe, Tun conceded, but it was an emergency. The chairman's gaze hardened. He would not take no for an answer. Both guilds had to work together on this unconfirmed gate. Their original plan included the Hu Guild, the chairman added. But a sudden overseas dispatch pulled them out. This was a 3 guild threat, and the deadline was in 2 days. He He leaned forward, looking completely grave. He promised maximum support funds and reward money, anything else. They needed the association would move mountains to provide. Tun paused then. Asked if they had to form a team strictly from their guild members. The chairman shook his head. It did not matter, but to prevent panic and chaos, they were limiting access to a small number of verified individuals only. Tun gave a curt nod, his agreement clear. At the Shinwa Guild, Kim burst through the doors, shrugging off his coat. His subordinates greeted him with utmost deference, but Kim was already moving. He barked out orders to assemble. Team exclusively from A-rank guild members or higher. They had 2 days to select the roster. Kim's mind raced as a familiar irritation bubbled up. Tun's smug smile replayed in his head. The man always had a trick. He viewed Tun as an arrogant nuisance and was dead set on using this opportunity to cut him down. Besides, his next command was sharp, slicing through the air. Get Kang Yuren on that team immediately. One of the women hesitated, warning that Kang was not affiliated with their guild, and with her personality, she would likely reject the offer outright. Kim's voice cracked like a whip. Who did not know that? His tone dropped thick with menace. He did not care how, they just had to bring Kang Yuren here by any means necessary. Fail, and they could both consider their careers in this field over permanently. The two subordinates exchanged shocked glances, but quickly affirmed his orders. Kim, however, was already a step ahead. He secretly preferred that Kang was not bound to any guild, making her the perfect target for a proper recruitment. Talk about a perfect chance to poach a premier talent, while proving to Tun that even among the world's absolute elite, power was never evenly distributed. 2 days later, the air crackled with anticipation in front of the mysterious gate. Tahan stood ready, accompanied by Shin, his vice guild master, and Sunj, who glanced around impatiently. What time was it? She muttered. The others still had not shown. He checked his comms. 5 minutes. The Shinwa Guild is notoriously punctual. They will arrive exactly on the dot. Sunj scoffed, muttering that she absolutely could not stand them. They had no manners at all. A dangerous glint entered her eyes. If they ever did show up, she might just be tempted to put a bullet through their heads. A hand landed a light smack on her. Watch your words, Sunj, the Vice Guild Master warned, calling her out by name. She rubbed the sore spot, grumbling about how brutishly strong he was. He glared, then lunged. She bolted, laughing as he chased her away. Shin chuckled, watching the scene unfold, remarking that they really got along. Tahan offered a faint smile. Looks can be deceiving, but in a fight they are rock solid. He turned to Shin, thanking him for coming. Honestly, he thought Shin would turn him down. Shin waved a hand. He was honored to help, especially after receiving that item. He paused, a different glint in his eye. There was another reason. 5 days ago, a system window popped up with a hidden quest for elite players. The selection process had not even begun yet, but he was already chosen. Why would he decline? The difficulty was extreme, sure, but the rewards were insane. Some players even awakened new abilities. Tahan nodded, slowly realizing it was tied to this dungeon. He offered an apologetic look, apologizing in advance for Kim's inevitable rudeness. Right then, Kim and his team strode up, looking genuinely surprised. You are early, he drawled without any apology. He claimed he was swamped, but apparently overkill had time to kill. They probably spent all their days in low-ranking gates, giving them endless free time. The overkill vice guild master leaned in, urging Sunj to ignore him, telling her not to give him any ammo. He cut off her angry retort with a firm, quiet warning. He swept his gaze across both groups, sensing the ugly rivalry between their guilds. It was not just personal anymore. The feud was splashed across the mass media, a constant war of words over which guild was stronger. Kim's eyes narrowed on Shin, a sneer twisting his lips. So this was Tahan's big secret, his hidden card. He acted like he had an ace up his sleeve, but it was just a nobody. He scoffed, looking Shin up and down, asking if he was going on a trip in those clothes. His tone sharpened, warning this was no picnic. Dungeon raids were no joke. It looked like Shin was just there to get carried. Another hunter quickly stepped between them, introducing their newest powerhouse member, Kang, who had overheard the petty squabble, cut in sharply. They had no time to waste on useless arguments, so they needed to move. Sunj stared in absolute shock. The entire roster was absolutely insane. This was the legendary Kang, Korea's strongest element master, capable of wielding all 6 elements in S rank. Sorcerer, add Kim and Tahan to the mix, and they had an all-star lineup. This raid would be a total cakewalk. Shin, however, felt a cold. Dread settled deep inside. Easy, not a chance. This dungeon was the exact same. One from his previous life, where 8 high-rank awakened had gone in. Only Tahin crawled out alive, barely saved by a desperate trump card skill. Disappeared without a trace, a total disaster, 7 top. Tier hunters were simply declared missing. The association buried the incident. So deep that almost no record remained. Shin couldn't guarantee their survival, let alone a win. Stepping inside, Kim immediately lunged forward, obliterating a doll monster with casual ease before chuckling. Too easy, he thought, but Shin's unease deepened. Why was this so simple? Heading back, Shin remarked on the cool architecture, but the vice leader snapped at him to lower his voice. Then dead silence. The gate had completely vanished, and get this, it was sealed tight. Overkill's vice leader slammed his fist against the invisible barrier, desperately trying to pry it open, but it held solid. He declared they would have to force it. Shin asked flatly if they wanted him to try. Some party members launched attacks, slamming their skills against the barrier, but nothing worked. Then Kim barked at them to step aside, taking over, but before he could unleash his power, 2 maid dolls burst from the shadows, their blades flashing. Kim reacted instantly, striking them down. How dare they get in his way, one of the girls muttered, calling his skill impressive. Kim scoffed, saying it was no big deal. Why waste effort on trivial trash? But right as he turned away, that trivial trash began to stir, their broken bodies reforming in a complete resurrection. Kim barely glanced at them, noting their ability with a cocky smirk on his lips, but they would need a massive power jump that this entire dungeon couldn't provide just to slow him down. He flicked his wrist, summoning 2 colossal glowing hands that slammed down to crush the respawning monsters flat, while the others fought the relentless beasts. Shin and Kang stood completely still. Why not fight? Shin asked. She shot the same question back. Shin simply explained he was a support class, with no real reason to. She shrugged, saying she didn't want to waste effort on this party. Excitement faded. She had expected to work alongside Korea's strongest, but this. It was purely flash, zero substance. They couldn't even kill a single monster, making her regret not declining the invitation flatly. Shin, however, focused entirely on the monster's polluted mana. It felt wrong, unnatural, like invisible threads tethered them all together. Their corrupted energy converging on a single unseen object. Break that. Maybe it all collapses. He also questioned showing his true hand to this group, figuring his borrowed rental powers would easily get him by. Kang finally moved, an arcane glyph blossoming beneath her feet, conjuring something tiny from the dirt. Shin watched closely. Got enough mana for these bugs, he teased. Why not help, like she said before? She shot back, casually crushing a bug with a flick of her wrist. She only kills what she wants. Worth a check, Shin mused. Before teasingly asking if she was afraid of bugs, she snapped back, her voice sharp with irritation. You're annoying. He smiled, claiming he was observing, not meddling, though his tone softened with a slight apology. Meanwhile, Kim kept hammering the unending horde of bugs. His frustration grew as they resurrected faster than he could crush them. Why were his attacks useless? Nearby, Tahin fought with grim focus. Suddenly, the entire battlefield went dead silent. Kim blinked. Just when he was finally getting warmed up, massive energy surged inside him, even as his own flames fizzled out. It looked like the main controlling object was finally destroyed. Siphoning the core's mana, a sudden realization hit Shin immediately. This was the resurrection source, hidden without his special eyes. Totally hidden, undiscovered, he could only wonder about it. Did this hidden core doom his raid in his past life? Meanwhile, Tahin reported a mostly clear lobby to the vice leader. Unsure what lay ahead, Tahin requested a full first-floor sweep. The vice master agreed, taking the lead and ordering everyone forward. But of course, they immediately slammed into another monstrous group. Kim didn't hesitate, shoving the vice leader right out of the way. Shouting that he was taking point, Kim lunged straight into battle. As they clashed, Shin wondered if the monster's mana had a core. Pointing to a precise spot, Shin called out a target. He ordered her to shoot, leaving her completely confused. She asked if that would break the controller, and Shin explained. In an instant, understanding clicked. The solution was simple. Simple, brutal. Shin marveled at their immense speed. They cleared the first floor in a blur of brutal efficiency. Reaching the stairs, Tahin announced the first floor was cleared. Kim snapped at Tahin to stop acting like a damn leader. Tahin ignored Kim entirely, motioning for his team to follow him. Kim watched him seethe, convinced Tahin was ignoring him. He silently swore to crush his rival's massive pride. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through Kim's body from pushing too hard. "Move out," his bravado quickly faded as they walked. The girls suggested sticking close, but a subtle unease bothered Shin. Tahin's words felt off, even if nothing seemed concrete yet. Driven by a bad feeling, Shin slipped away alone. Right there on the second-floor landing stood a solitary figure. A massive wave of pressure hit them. Kim yelled there was no time. Surrounded instantly, they fought desperately to survive. Tahin shouted to check if everyone was all right. His mind instantly zeroed in on the invisible, high-ranking threat. The Vice Master confirmed he was fine, while Sun checked in. But then her voice hitched as she realized Shin was missing. Tahin's blood ran cold as he scanned the chaotic battleground. He had not seen Shin since this sudden ambush started. Where was he? Tahin roared his name in panic. Meanwhile, in a quiet room, Shin felt the frantic pulse of battle. Outside, things were looking rough. He had just finished absorbing the last of the mana. He needed to get back to the others right away, but the exit was already sealed shut. He tensed up, scanning the room. Were there enemies lurking in here too? Just then, a little girl quietly appeared from right behind that closed door. She held a tiny doll. Shin stared, his mind reeling. A kid in here. "Are you the hunter?" she piped up, before immediately turning around to walk away. "Just follow me," she told him. Shin called out to stop her. How did she know he was a hunter? The girl paused, looking back. The lady downstairs told her a hunter would come save them, she explained simply. They were supposed to leave together. Since he was here, he had to be the one. The lady downstairs, Shin's brow furrowed as they headed toward the stairs together. The little girl looked up, asking with a puzzled frown if he did not know her. It was weird, but she knew he was definitely the hunter who was promised. Reaching the bottom, the girl called out, "Lady, wake up, he is finally here." Shin looked at the lady, whose vacant stare showed some deep psychological trauma. Cutting straight to the chase, he explained the Hunter Association had sent him. He hoped this would break through her mental fog, and luckily, it worked. She shot upright, a massive wave of pure relief washing over her face. Gasping out her gratitude, she revealed she was actually the fourth scout sent inside. The first three never came back, so she was ordered to find them. But the second she stepped inside, creepy dolls swarmed her from every direction. They charged straight at her, catching her completely off guard as she tried escaping. She tried to reach the gate, but the sealed door trapped her completely inside. Realizing they were in the same boat, Shin asked a crucial question. He asked her if she knew what had happened to the other scouts. She had called out to them, but something felt deeply wrong. They seemed completely unconscious before suddenly attacking, forcing her to flee. She eventually met the little girl, but warned she liked playing way too much. Shin asked for the kid's name. Elizabeth, she replied, though she preferred bait. Shin suggested they regroup and leave immediately, since staying here was too dangerous. But she warned him that the second floor outside was far more deadly. They fought desperately once again against those invisible monsters. Shin could tell the enemy's stealth was finally starting to slip. Were these actually human-type monsters? Suddenly, a small card fluttered down. Shin stared at the face on it. It matched a missing scout poster. Just then, Sun's voice cut through the air, noting their familiar faces. Shin barked a command to hold fire because these were the scouts. He quickly analyzed the situation. Their stealth skill had a cooldown period. This left them completely vulnerable, with heavily reduced movement speed. But defeating them easily was off the table as Kim's shout echoed. He excitedly bellowed about them learning stealth, right before the truth hit. Spotting the scouts with slowing speed, Kim made a move. He charged to punch them, but Sun retaliated, firing a shot. The projectile aimed straight at his nose, only fueling Kim's absolute rage. A flicker of madness filled his eyes as he swore they were not monsters. He wanted to save them. Surely there was a way to restore these people, but then the thick murderous intent of the fading figures washed over him, snapping his mind too. A simple rule: kill or be killed. It did not matter who they were. Anyone showing aggression had to die, and the scouts were no exception. Those unconscious scouts suddenly jolted awake, scrambling up and lunging right at Kim. He snarled a warning to Sun, get in his way and she would die first. Sun reeled back, fury blazing as she prepared to strike, but Shin stopped. Her stepping right between them, he urged Kim to stop, desperately hoping he would listen. But Kim only glared back with an icy, cutting look. Everyone is completely blind. He told them, promising to show Shin just how blind he truly was. Right then, a young girl moved, defiantly standing directly in front of Shin. Kim's voice dropped to a freezing chill. This is not a request, but a deal. He would hand over the raid spoils and Shinhwa Guild funding. Surely those massive terms would make them think. Suddenly, an attack flashed straight at Kim. He effortlessly blocked it with his heavy hand armor. Consider it a warning, Kim hissed. Make one wrong move and Shin is dead. Relief washed over Shin, cutting through the dread. He had bought some precious time. Sun quietly mumbled a quick apology, but Shin told her to worry about that later. Right now, they must focus on saving everyone. That is when Bait turned to Shin, asking in a hushed whisper if he had also seen those terrifying, horrifying dolls outside. Every single one of them was completely tangled up in thick purple threads. Those monster dolls simply would not die unless the threads were cut. They just kept coming, and the strings were incredibly sturdy. Almost impossible to break. She shivered at how terrifying it was. Shin pressed her, asking if removing the threads would turn their colleagues back. Bait hesitated, explaining that even if they got the purple threads off, they still had to disable a device attached to the bodies, trying to rip them off only causes the body to collapse. It was a brutal answer to a grim question, but her raw honesty struck Shin deeply. It reminded him of something else, up on the second floor. Talk about a nightmare scenario. With stealth broken, they only had 30 seconds to survive. Sunan, deeply worried, turned to Kang and asked if he could block them with ice. Kang, already bristling with frustration, snapped at her not to cross the line. Meanwhile, the relentless digital countdown blared. Kim, raw power building up inside him, unleashed his ability, lunging forward only to slam into an invisible wall. His power was completely nullified, and the agonizing pain from before began to flare up with every heartbeat. Suddenly, a calm, crisp voice cut through the panic. Shin had powered down just in time, standing beside Bait. He admitted they barely managed to pull him back. From here on, he announced, it was his show. Tahin spun around. He asked where Shin had gone so suddenly. Shin remained calm, explaining he just needed to check on a minor detail. Tahin sighed in relief, warning him that there could be no more vanishing acts. Shin warns Tahin, the hidden scouts are closing. Tahin charges forward. He stands firm, stay back, he orders, as invisible threats pass. Tahin's blood runs cold. They are hunting Shin. Watch out, he yells. But Shin sees them clearly. Corrupted mana threads glow like spider webs. The light reveals their blurry shapes. Suddenly, Tahin lunges forward. He blocks a strike meant for Shin. I see their weak points, Shin calls. His voice is sharp and focused. I will mark them. Avoid the main body. Tahin nods, asking about the blue shards. Shin points them out. Tahin strikes instantly, shattering a doll with one precise blow. As they fight, the whole strategy clicks into place. This is it, that circular device in the center. Shin directs. That is the core weakness, so aim right there. Every strike on those spots makes the dolls crumble. Tahin looks on, frowning in complete confusion. Why now? They never shattered like this before. Once the last doll shatters, Tahin turns to Shin, his earlier question resurfacing. So when you investigated that first floor earlier, did you actually find anything important? Shin tells him there was nothing special down there. He had been deep in his own search when he found a surviving scout. Her wounds were too severe to join them, but she explained the situation and mapped out the weak points. Tahin cuts in. What about the kid? Bait helped him find the scout, Shin explains. Her parents are trapped deeper inside. Kim stares at Bait, his expression hardening. Something is definitely off here, Kim warns. Shin presses for details. Sensing their doubt, Kim scoffs. Seriously, a normal girl in this place. The gate is a top-tier secret under constant surveillance. Do not let her innocence fool you. It is monitored constantly. There is no way anyone could have slipped inside. Tahin acknowledges the point but warns him. Do not jump to conclusions. Kim snaps back, accusing Tahin of nitpicking. You would still be wandering blindly if I had not gone easy on you. Maybe I should cut my losses and wipe out your entire guild right now. Tahin's voice drops low. I do not seek useless fights, Kim, but it seems you need a harsh lesson in teamwork. Their eyes flash violet. Kim is acting like he is above everyone. Sun snaps. Now is our chance to Humble him, but the girl beside Kim sneers, telling Sun to stop. Tahan, instead of spouting nonsense, what if he gets killed? Shin shoots back, demanding to know who she thinks will die. You think Tahan will lose, she insists, panic rising in her voice. Sun, hurry and stop him. Kim's rage flares. You think you can carry your leader? But once he is unconscious, Tahan, equally furious, locks eyes, heavy power crackles in the air as they prepare to clash. Shin feels a sharp jolt as chaotic energy spikes. He cannot pinpoint why everyone is suddenly losing control. Meanwhile, a shimmering aura begins pulsing around Bait. She smirks, admitting she only nudged their inner feelings, yet they are tearing each other apart like crazy. Pathetic, she calls it. She turns to Shin, thanking him for accidentally helping her deploy her brainwashing skill. She just needed to get close without suspicion. Raising zero suspicion, acting as the perfect unwitting accomplice, Shin's blood ran completely cold. He initially saw her as a monstrous child, but when had that shifted? When did she start looking like a normal kid in his eyes? Had he been under her influence, brainwashed since their very first encounter? It was already too late. The sudden realization hit him like a physical blow. He had to stop this before the entire group fell under her spell. He strained to move, but unseen threads tightened, holding him fast. A cold, deep dread seeped in. He wasn't the only one. Everyone else was caught in the exact same invisible web. Was this her method, using corrupted mana to warp not just physical bodies, but minds themselves? He watched in horror as the terrifying truth clicked, and still he'd missed every single sign, swallowing every lie. Suddenly, a familiar hum resonated through him. His passive skill, mana absorption, flared to life. As he siphoned off the pervasive, corrupted mana, a grim certainty settled. She had picked the wrong opponent. Kim reeled, utterly bewildered. Bait just chuckled, so Shin knew how to absorb corrupted mana. How amusing. How utterly amusing. Shin roared, his voice cutting right through the growing chaos. Bait is from the academy, attack her now. But before anyone could move, Bait's voice, sweet and innocent, rang out. Mom, Dad. Instantly, two figures materialized beside her. She pointed right at Shin's group with a pout, accusing them of bullying her. Punish them, she demanded. Kim, his eyes glazed, flexed his hands, muttering about ending them all in a single blow. Bait simply smiled at Shin, telling him it was time to put on a show. Kim unleashed an explosive attack, tearing a deep gouge in the ground between them. Kahan stared aghast. Kim, what are you doing? But Kim was gone, a puppet on Bait's strings, the invisible threads coiling deeper within him. Bait clapped her hands, genuinely pleased with her work. Shin's mind raced. Was this why he had felt that faint trace of corrupted mana from Kim's hand earlier? Bait, as if reading his thoughts, offered an explanation. Lewis, she revealed, preferred to hide behind the shy, those who went unnoticed, making them the perfect hosts. She found it endlessly entertaining, watching them fight their own teammates turned into enemies. This is brutal, their own ally. A living doll, now a weapon. She leaned forward, eager to see what chaos would unfold next. Kahan, grim-faced, moved to engage Kim, promising to take him down fast with the others assisting. They nodded, fanning out to support, but as they closed in, Kim's hands glowed and a shimmering barrier erupted around him. Shin stared, wondering what had just happened. A girl quickly explained it was a skill Kim activated only when his life hung by thread. The barrier was impenetrable, immune to interference for a set amount of time, remaining active for several hours. Bait smirked. With just one opponent neutralized, she only had 3 left to deal with. Time to end this. Shin felt the raw energy pouring off them. These weren't the typical dolls he'd encountered. Each one bristled with the threat of a dungeon boss. Pushing past those 2 guards was suicide. They had to face them head-on, but a gut feeling nagged him. Something was off. These weren't standard control types. Kahan immediately called it. I will take the female doll you handle. Focus on the male doll. Simple plan, hit hard and end this fast. Sun gave a grim nod. Suddenly the male doll, Kim, charged. Taehin braced himself, ready to clash. Ready? Shin watched Kim manipulate ice and mana threads. A sudden thought sparked. Was this the power that turned hunters into dolls? If so, did a system glitch mess with Kim's supposedly unbreakable shield? Shin wondered. He suspected Kim's skill turned hunters into dolls, but the pieces just did not fit. Kim changed instantly, even after taking in everyone's toxic energy. Yet earlier, when they were wrapped in those exact threads, Bait had the perfect chance to turn them all, and simply did not. It made no sense at all. While the others fought, Shin's mind raced. If Bait was merely playing with them, why build this massive lie? She guided him directly to the lost Scout, even pointing out the weak spots of the doll turned. Then, after earning his trust, she threw away the act, making the whole setup completely pointless. No cruel manipulator would act like this. It felt almost as if she was forced to fight. Kim landed a brutal blow on Tahan. Shin noted Tahan's high durability. Still, that blow left a mark. Luckily, the weapon Shin custom-made for Tahan allowed him to focus his energy, keeping it steady and fully primed to detonate. It was a shame, but at least they had a secret weapon ready for a crisis like this. Then, Sun shouted to the Vice Guild leader, telling him the target was soft enough now. She fired an enhanced bullet, ripping a massive hole right through the doll's chest, yet it kept moving. Tahan locked eyes with Kim, realizing this fight was far trickier than expected. What surprised him most was the complete lack of variety, just basic physical hits that left one real worry: mental attacks. As a berserker, he could fight them off, but not entirely. He barked orders: stay paired up and watch for mental strikes. Hold your ground unless ordered otherwise. They are all dead, Mom. Dad, Bait shrieked, a wild grin twisting her face as Tahan lunged. Perfect timing. Tahan's heavy strike connected, knocking a tiny doll from her hand. Son cheered, relieved. She bragged that there was never anything to worry about. Ken chimed in, saying she acted like it was a major deal, but it was just boring. Shin, too, figured the battle was done. His initial theories were completely wrong. But Tahan stared down at Bait's small, lifeless body. Monster or not, seeing a dead child still made his stomach turn. He was about to order a retreat. But just when they thought they were safe, an unseen force slammed into them, freezing them in place. Not magic, not a mental attack, just a terrifying, overwhelming presence. Something utterly alien. Shin recognized that terrifying aura instantly. As expected, he muttered, the hidden boss. Suddenly, a system screen flashed, displaying new main and extra objectives along with some grim rewards. Then Bait rose, her true form a vampire of chilling beauty, shimmering into existence. She purred her thanks, her voice now a melodic whisper thick with dark power. She had been waiting for someone to destroy her parents. Her soft smile faded, replaced by snarl of venom, shouting that they betrayed her, so now they will live eternally. Bound by her power, her voice rose to a furious crescendo, calling them ungrateful bastards for leaving her in that useless, pathetic body. A dark laugh escaped her, echoing with ancient malice. Now she finally felt alive, wondering how long it had been. Every second in that weak form was absolute torture, a state she despised. Kang roared out, snapping Sun and the Vice Guild master from their shock, yelling at them not to stand there like idiots but to get ready. Kang knew with a chilling, absolute certainty that even Tahan's incredible raw talent stood no chance against a monster of this scale. Bait's cold gaze drifted over to Tahan, a twisted smile playing on her lips. She cooed that he was pretty cute, but her eyes suddenly narrowed. Still a rat bastard, she added. The cryptic words left the others baffled, but Bait only chuckled softly. She wondered aloud what would happen, eyes gleaming as she welcomed a long-awaited meal. Right then, she unleashed her devastating essence drain, and the group immediately doubled over, coughing up blood. Kang's mind raced. Powerful undead excelled at absorption magic, but to completely suppress everyone at this distance, without any signs of preparation. Just how terrifying of a monster was this Bait? Tahan ignited his flares, channeling raw power while Bait watched, completely unfazed. He was strong, she admitted, strong enough that even in his battered state, he could have posed a serious threat. Tilting her head, she noted that if he could use his full power, things might have ended differently, but that was not going to happen. Clenching her hand to crush an invisible force, she struck. Meanwhile, Shin stared at Tahan, the silent question heavy between them. Just how dangerous of a threat was this opponent? Tahan, feeling the weight of the unspoken challenge, grew immediately defensive. He demanded to know what Shin meant, so Shin laid out the cold truth. Tahan's berserker explosions had a strict limit. Sustaining 100% output was impossible. Without shattering his body and mind, Shin knew Tahan adjusted it, but he was still new to managing the volatile explosion skill. During their last intense battle against Rachin, Tahan had barely unleashed half his maximum. He was clearly holding back even more now, making Tahan grimace. Even then, his strongest sword had shattered into pieces. Honestly, in his current state, pushing an output level he had never even attempted before seemed impossible, but he promised to buy them time. Shin smirked. He admitted a selfish part of him wanted to monopolize Tahin's ridiculous abilities. A strange energy rippled through the air, making Tahin freeze. Heavy mana. Shin felt it too. It felt like they were bound together now. Shin continued in a low, quiet voice. They might as well keep pushing each other to ensure they both grew stronger. Instantly, Shin activated his demonic weapon production he had already hoarded. 100 units of polluted mana, scouring the demon territory for the perfect weapon. With a final surge, the crafting finished. The demonic Leviathan materialized, humming with dark, crackling power directly in front of Tahin. Take it. Shin urged, eyes alight with excitement, demanding to see Tahin's true power. Tahin felt it. Immediately, this blade was entirely different. Any other sword, no matter how powerful, he would have taken without a single second thought, but this one radiated a deeply alien, terrifying energy. Even knowing Shin had forged it, Tahin hesitated a beat before his fingers closed. Round the hilt, a sudden jolt of raw power surging through his veins. The polluted mana was incredibly dense, crackling with a distinct flame attribute. It was terrifyingly powerful. Polluted mana and a flame attribute, Bait mused, her voice a low, mocking. Quite strong but highly unfortunate for them now. Her hand flashed, a crimson surge. Crimson tendrils seep out as her bloodbath territory activates. They soak instantly into Shin's boots, a wide area skill, and his mind races. Was it absorption, a complete shutdown? Bait's cruel grin only grows wider. This absorption is not that intense yet, she purrs, but it is still versatile. Her gaze sharpens. Your mana management, your basic metabolism, they will slowly seize up every single bone, muscle, nerve, and vein in your body. Melt away. The pain won't be unbearable, but it will definitely take its toll. Tahin keeps pushing forward. Bait watches him. A cold thought forms. He still moves like nothing happened, even after that killer technique, but it is a lie. Tahin's body is completely possessed, the sword commanding every twitch and stride. This power, far beyond anything she has ever seen, is challenge. Good, he yells, time to shatter you. He lunges and Bait counters instantly, unleashing her thirsty hand of blood magic. The crimson claw surges, but Tahin meets it head-on. A blinding flare explodes from his blade, ripping through her attack and completely obliterating it. Bait's eyes widen, confusion clouding her face. What was that? This sheer force is easily double his previous output, maybe even more. Shin, equally stunned, watches as Tahin's blade carves right into Bait. She chokes, spitting blood as a chilling realization dawns on her. He was holding back this entire time. Then the system screen flashes. Talk about a massive win. Shin's main quest is success hidden. Defeated, a massive reward box appears, and Shin's hopes immediately latch onto mana recovery or capacity items. Suddenly, the Leviathan's sword shimmers, then vanishes. Shin scans the description, a new question forming. Was this weapon drop purely random, or did some unknown standard guide it? Tahin sways, the sword's dark influence finally gone. His body trembles violently. He wonders what just happened, but Shin tells him to just stay put. His voice is firm. Tahin is barely standing, moving is completely out of the question. You are too hurt and pushed way too far, pouring out all that power. Shin shakes his head at Tahin's recklessness. Let's just rest, he says. Nobody is dying yet. Tahin staggers over to Bait, who weakly smiles despite her heavy injuries. Congratulations, Shin, she whispers. Shin eyes her critically. Her wound is not fatal. Is the raid really a success? If she is still breathing, he turns his focus to her. The corrupted mana, the dolls, all trace back to you, yet you do not control them. They protected you like their own property. Explain. Bait nods. They have to protect me. I'm their precious power source, the one keeping them running. She begins her old tale. Long ago, on a whim, I did something completely out of character. I saved Wraith from drowning. A strange story, yes, but it did not end there. The dolls, equally strange, refused to let their savior go. They invited me to stay. Human had never done that before, and soon I found myself trapped. I do not know when the turning point came, but when I woke up, I was no longer a guest. I was family. For a short time, I was actually happy. Then the raw truth clawed its way out. They did not accept me from kindness. It was my foolish weakness, an empathy that allowed them to betray and control me. It proved I had gone soft. That is how they sealed me in this girl's body, locking away my true. She lost her magic. Now she only exists to supply polluted mana for survival. Protect them from what? Shin wondered aloud, but Bait was not quite sure. Have you looked outside yet? She asked, pointing toward a truly terrifying view. An endless, brutal desert stretched out all the way to the horizon. Zero end in sight, but get this, it was completely artificial. It was a massive magic barrier, built solely to protect the entire estate. Bait believed her own mother had used her final powers to conjure it, to keep them safe from monsters beyond the fissure, and Shin knew that name. His world also suffered from the fissure. That was how he ended up here. It felt like their different worlds had mirrored each other in tragedy. Skies ripped open, humanity awakened to mana, and then the gates appeared. Monsters far worse than any vampire poured out. Shin stepped closer, mind racing. He needed answers. How did her world survive the disaster of the gates? How many years had it been? The end, she replied, was simply inevitable. Sadly, she did not witness the fall firsthand. She was totally trapped. Locked inside a frozen body, she endured years of darkness, unable to move. During that time, her world fell, leaving this estate as a lonely island. Just recently, her body finally moved, and then a system window appeared. Right before her eyes, Shin understood now she was an actual player too. Just like him, seeing the confusion on his face, Bait nodded slowly. She apologized quietly, knowing she could never answer all his burning questions. Right then, her body began to break, deep cracks spreading across her skin. Death, she whispered with a faint smile, was not so bad after all. Shin watched her collapse, but suddenly, a loud system notification blared out. The demonic cycle of control was available. A small smile touched his lips. He opened the screen and lunged, his hand reaching for her neck as she gasped. "What are you doing?" she whispered. He replied that this was no coincidence. His gaze was intense. He had not needed this skill before, but he was curious. Personally, he wanted to know. Then, the cold system voice boomed. "Equipping this item saves the target from death, making them a subordinate familiar." Completely under his control, Shin had seen plenty of familiars before, but this. Seriously, we have seen some crazy things, but another player as a familiar. The contract was sealed. The screen confirmed her brand new status. He did not expect her to transform, but a cat instead of a bat. That was pretty jarring. Even her necklace morphed to fit the shape. Snapping back to human, she glared. "Do not make me fall in love with you. You are just using me as a familiar." It was beyond humiliating for her. It was pure agony. Shin doubted she could even keep this human shape. Not for long, but she had absolutely no right to refuse his terms. A new screen popped up. Supplying her with any mana unlocked her abilities. Just a temporary fix, though. The whole setup seemed pretty strange to him. A familiar who could not even transform at will. What a bizarre situation. He still had no clue how to use her, but they were stuck together now. For better or worse, she turned back into a cat and he picked her up. "Put me down," she hissed. He just laughed, asking if she could still talk. The tension fades. Shin feels a spark of curiosity. Had she really been betrayed by her own family? Confused, she asks what he means, but he cuts her off, reminding her that she already spilled everything. No need to repeat herself. He stands up, pacing slightly. Something here still does not add up. Bait explains that they siphoned her power just to survive, and yet she wonders if a miserable existence like that even has any real meaning. Honestly, her family just seems pathetic to him. Were they even rational or just driven by pure ego? They act like programmed dolls mindlessly. Repeating a preset pattern, Bait argues there was nothing to be done since human minds were designed to evolve alongside their physical bodies. They warped themselves by force-feeding on corrupted mana, letting their egos swell while their sanity shriveled away. Do you really expect her to feel any sympathy for them? Shin shakes his head. No normal human would choose to live like that. Shin's thoughts drift back to the father doll. Bait cuts in with a sharp demand. What is he getting at? If it was not him, he would not choose this. So what is his point? Shin summons a glowing purple orb. Gesturing for Bait to come closer, she floats forward and unsettling compulsion gripping her from his simple command. As they approach the light, Shin explains that this is a special crystal used for dark magic, capable of storing both raw mana and fragments of a person's soul. Her family must have siphoned her power directly from her, pouring it into the doll while sealing away their own essence. They lacked true strength, but their magical technique was undeniably brilliant. Bait frowns, wanting to ask more, but Shin stops her. There was no other way. Suddenly, the scene shifts and they materialize inside a quiet house, a family sits gathered around a dinner table, speaking in hushed, tense tones. The mother speaks with a strained voice. She has seen thousands of visions lately, but the outcome never changes. The end is always identical, a collision of two worlds. Is coming, and over the past few years, the frequency has grown rapidly. Even if they delay it, there will not be enough time to prepare. Bate realizes this is just a memory, a vision woven from the past. The father leans forward, pressing for details on her theory about alternate dimensions and the proposed method. If his wife is right, then at least their family might survive. The mother explains that with Bate's unique power, they could isolate their estate and cut it loose from the doomed, collapsing world. But that triggers a worse fate. They would be trapped in the endless void, drifting aimlessly until a foreign entity eventually stumbles upon them. That agonizing process could take hundreds or even thousands of long years. Until then, they face a slow, tormenting death. The father looks deeply worried, while the young boy refuses to drag Bate into this dangerous scheme. The mother snaps in disbelief. They only have a few years left, but Bate is different. Can they not at least find a way to save her? They only survived because of what she did, and if doom is certain, if they were pressed, at least one family member had to survive. Her cold gaze softened, but she would never cooperate with them now. Not after they bound her with that magic thread. Why do this? Why betray her after she trusted them? Bate feels completely crushed. Inside the vision, the grieving family stands together, summoning glowing light. Crystals form in their hands. The young boy speaks up quietly. He asks if their minds will survive inside these wooden bodies. The father answers right away, his voice heavy with grim truth. They will keep their human minds for decades, maybe a century. But slowly, inevitably, those memories will begin to fade away. After 2 centuries, they are empty vessels, total blanks. Forgotten souls trapped inside wooden dolls. Locked in this quiet space, they waited for danger to arrive. When threats appear, the dolls will serve as Bate's shield. Her father is resolved to do everything to keep her safe. They will guard her until a savior from another world arrives. Shin, who just consumed 50 units of dark mana, notices Bate crying. He wonders why her family never told her sooner. Shin speaks flatly. He notes that they all would have met a grim end together. They could not avoid this doom, and she would have faced it too. Now Shin demands she move. They are running completely out of time. A system screen confirms his words. Bate has only 2 minutes of freedom. This is barely a temporary boost. 50 dark mana bought only 3 minutes. He scoffs, warning her that he will not waste such an expensive price. She needs to stop crying and finish this. Her family remains here as dolls. They protected her for centuries. The least she can do is free them. Bate scrambles up, crying out that she simply cannot bring herself to do it. Stop being pathetic, Shin snaps. Their doom was certain, yet they chose this path anyway. They abandoned their own happiness. They locked themselves in an endless prison just for her. They did it out of sheer devotion. It is time for her to honor that. The least she can do is honor them, watch her prepare to act. Now Bate finally unleashes her true power, causing the system screen to flicker. An additional goal is met. Shin has discovered the truth about himself. With the dungeon raid complete, rescuers arrive to pull them out. Though severely injured, Shin still walks out under his own power. He silently muses that this dungeon felt much longer than he expected. He keeps that thought from Bate, who is still stuck in her feline form. He asks how she likes this world compared to her old one. She mutters that there is no comparison. The mana here is incredibly weak. But she has no choice. She must survive and thrive in this place. Night falls over the house as the scene shifts to an annoyed woman. She grumbles to herself, thoroughly annoyed by her inability to quit drinking. Suddenly spotting a figure, she demands to know what a rat is doing there. How rude, the young man replies, finally flicking on a light switch. To banish the shadows, complaining that she dared call him a rat. He claims he was just waiting for his colleague, Kang, completely exhausted. Kang snaps, her power flaring as she demands an end to the nonsense. She asks why he is even here, wondering if he wants to pay for the wine. Not even his life would cover it, she growls, slamming her hand down. He acts hurt, claiming he did not come here for personal reasons at all. Instead, he heard she had entered an unconfirmed dungeon and wanted to know more. He just wanted to hear the fun details once she finished recounting her raid. But as she talks, he smirks, realizing she did not actually see a thing. It genuinely surprises him to hear a proud queen blacked out so pathetically mid-raid. She tells him to shut up, completely annoyed by his smug attitude. Whether she was conscious or not, the final results were plain to see. With just 2 swings of the sword Shin made, Tahan completely crushed the boss. Even for a berserker, that raw power was unprecedented, making him nod. S ranks really are different, making Tahan a target worth hunting. Yet Kang remains unmoved, keeping her sharp focus entirely on the supporter instead. To everyone else, Shin is just a D-rank small fry who crafts basic weapons. But that low-rank sword somehow withstood a top-tier hunter's maximum power. If they could secure that weapon, she begins, but he waves her off dismissively. Sure, mass-producing sturdy swords is useful, but a tool is just a tool. Without a strong hand to swing it, the weapon itself is completely worthless. To him, true strength lies solely in the wielder and the fight's raw purity. Anything else is just a cheap distraction, he mutters while turning to leave. But she warns him that this very impurity might cause his downfall against Tahan. He pauses, actually agreeing that the D-rank supporter is quite intriguing. While Shin is no Tahan, she has caught his curiosity. He promises to meet the crafter later, hoping to kill both of them soon. He vows to eliminate both Tahan and the supporter before we shift to Shin's room. Shin lies flat on his bed, wrapped in a heavy cloak of deep exhaustion. Despite sleeping for ages, his body feels entirely drained of energy. It is likely Bate's dark absorption skills, not weapon crafting, that sapped him. He weakly calls out for Bate, asking if there is a way to stop this. Getting no answer, he looks around the quiet room and wonders where she went. He shrugs it off, knowing he can always force a summon if needed. She knows her place, but she is likely just exploring this strange new world. As long as she stays out of trouble, he is fine letting her wander. But check this out, his eyes lock onto a legendary mischievous treasure chest. It is a real treasure, the kind of legendary random reward players whispered about. He never expected to lay eyes on one outside of a video game screen. Although it materializes custom items for its owner, the gifts are notoriously flawed. For instance, it might spawn an incredibly sharp sword that lacks any defense. It could be built solely for attacking, leaving you completely exposed to strikes. Or a shield that absorbs heavy impacts only to reflect them at innocent bystanders. Yet despite these major flaws, the chest remains highly coveted. Cursed items were common, conditional gear usually spelled disaster. Bloodshed was common, he desperately needed a massive mana recovery boost. He steeled himself, what kind of twisted curse lay hidden inside. Opening the chest, a brilliant blue light bathed the entire room. Reaching inside, Shin slowly pulled out a ring called Trader's Gluttony. It granted a mana drain skill, but confusion hit him immediately. The system screen blared a warning, the skill had a catch. The drain only worked on people who actually liked him. Disgusted, Shin threw the ring. Just then, Bate walked in. His mind spun, the raw drain ability was incredibly powerful. But that ridiculous condition made it feel like a cursed joke. It felt more like a curse. Bate, oblivious to his anger, walked in. She noted he was mad but had a guest downstairs. Some idiot had just shown up. Shin quietly glanced out his bedroom window. Down below, Kim was stepping out of a fancy car. Why was he here, outside? Kim stared up at the dingy building. His face twisted in disgust. Why was Tahan letting Shin live in such a dump? Despite talking big, Tahan was clearly just a cheap scumbag. Still, Kim knew scouting Shin personally like this was a massive risk. But let's be real, Shin was absolutely worth the massive gamble. Kim did not need official reports. He had felt Shin's power firsthand. During their last encounter, Shin unleashed an energy that shattered the barrier. It had shaken Kim from a distance. A D rank, Kim scoffed at the idea. Shin had a rank potential, and Tahan knew it. If Shin was not completely loyal to Tahan, Kim would make his move. A second later, Shin appeared and asked how Kim found his apartment. His mind raced. There was no legal way Kim could track his address. Kim just shrugged, unbothered. How he found the place did not matter. Instead, he claimed most hunters would be absolutely thrilled by this level of attention. Normally, people loved knowing the top guild wanted them bad enough to do this. Surely Shin was impressed enough to come out personally. But Shin walked right past him, muttering that he did not come out for him. He was simply on his way to renew his helper job certificate. Kim cut straight to the point, criticizing the meager offers Tahan gave him. Immediately countering, he he promised Shin triple the amount to join him. While admitting he probably looked foolish before, Kim recognized real talent. For someone like Shin, his guild would provide completely unrivaled treatment. Shin just stared, surprised that Kim was actually so self-aware. But it changed nothing. Shin's answer was still a hard no. He had nothing to offer, causing Kim to bristle. The harsh words echoed Kang's recent rejection, making Kim snap. Clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white, Kim glared. Both of them would soon see exactly what his guild could do. They would come begging for work. With that, Kim stormed off in a rage. Clearly, he would have to change his entire approach to this recruit. It made sense. Shin bumped into a man, muttering a quick apology, but the stranger ignored him. He walked right past. Shin kept moving, a deep weariness weighing on him. Not fully recovered, a stranger stepped directly into his path. Right in his path, Shin searched his memory. The face was completely unfamiliar. Is Dajin still alive? Shin wondered. At a dungeon entrance, a hulking man with a giant hammer nodded to his leader. Prep is done, time to move. He swept his eyes across the group. At C rank and above, even elite hunters can get crippled or killed by a single mistake. They knew the risks, but could never be too careful. Nearby, a young woman nervously mumbled that this was her first time attempting a C rank or higher. Shin, the designated helper, felt a brief flicker of surprise, then offered calm reassurance. Our tank is a veteran. Stick with him and we will be fine. Shin knew, even as he said it, that offering such hollow guarantees was not really a helper's job. As they moved, a hooded man named Yun Dajin reviewed his own status window, a D rank supporter and a macro crafting specialist, 2 years as a hunter but only 1 year of actual field experience. Dajin recalled his first year with the Doan Guild under Hong Down over a shared meal. Down had mentioned a D-rank gate. Dajin then, completely fresh-faced, had questioned it. Why bother with something so simple? With your experience and the guild's resources, shouldn't we be aiming for C ranks? Down had only smiled. It is a D rank, yes, but its size and resource yields are massive. Dungeons like that offer huge profits for very little manpower. That is why the major guilds usually snap them up. D-rank dungeons seemed so small. Time Dajin had thought back then, especially for giant guilds already swimming in riches. They probably saw it as pocket change, but Dajin's gaze sharpened. For a new guild like ours, it is everything, even if we only pull in half of the expected amount. It is enough to upgrade my hardworking members' gear. We can train them in exclusive facilities instead of shared spaces. Not much left after that, but it is enough to build this guild from the ground up. Be patient. Dajin, Down had told him with a knowing glint in his eye. Soon, the entire world will know the name of Doan Guild, but Dajin remembered a different day entirely. The moment a shocking phone call from the association completely shattered his world. Meeting with an official, the man laid out the grim truths. Down, a B-rank hunter and recognized veteran, should not have died in a low-level dungeon like that. The official explained with a grim face that the dungeon Down entered was anything but ordinary. He whispered that he did not know what Dajin had been told. But the gate was unconfirmed. The post-raid investigation later confirmed it was a place of extreme danger. Standing there stunned, Dajin felt a cold certainty grip him. Down's death was absolutely no accident. He declared he would investigate the gate through an official auction. He did not know what others suspected, but he knew Down would never lie to him. The official then pressed, asking if Down had mentioned anything unusual beforehand. Dajin's mind reeled. Had the bidding for that gate been manipulated? Everything felt profoundly wrong, but Dajin forced the dark thoughts down. Replying in a neutral tone, he said that would go beyond common sense. The official then informed Dajin that Down's body would finally be transferred in 2 days once the investigation concluded, leaving him in tense silence. The informant added that they luckily recovered the remains, thanks to one sole survivor. Thanks to him it was easy, a survivor. Dajin wondered who. The man admitted he did not know the full story, just that he was lucky. Pushing the heavy memories aside, Dajin refocused. As the team arrived, time to start, the leader barked, gesturing ahead. We are going in, so let us finish this without any injuries. But as they stepped through the shimmering portal, Dajin froze. He could not shake a dark thought. How could veterans die? While Shin, a rookie D-rank supporter, survived, it made no sense. Every single clue pointed back to his older brother Doyan's tragic death. No matter what it took, Dajin vowed he would uncover the truth. Soon after, a mysterious figure approached the gate, only to be stopped. Only raid participants are allowed in, the guard stated, blocking him. The man smoothly claimed he was with a party, explaining that he must have got the time wrong. Flashing a permit, he urged them to check. As the guard verified it, he grumbled to himself. These lunatics would crawl out at all hours without these strict rules. He handed it back, declaring the permit approved. What a relief, the man smiled thinly, but the guard was suspicious. He asked what he said, and the stranger played it off. Claiming he was just glad to enter, the stranger whispered something dark. Because if he was not, they would all be dead by now. His thoughts turned to Dajun. Let us see what powers he has. Inside, the party had just taken down the massive boss monster. We finally did it ourselves, the team leader cheered with relief. But Dajun felt a cold shiver. Something was deeply wrong here. There was no way this was a mere C-rank dungeon. This was easily a high-level B rank if they held back.